chicken. I look forward to your job. Take care of David. That's under other duties as maybe a son. Yeah. Been there, done that.
We know where Counselor Bounds is.
Do you want me to go find him?
I just saw him outside.
Are we all set, Madam Clerk? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The hour is 7 o'clock, and as mayor, I hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Laconia City Council scheduled for July 23rd, 2018 at this hour. As always, we'll begin our meeting tonight with a salute to our American flag. I would ask that you all please rise and join Councilor Cheney in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For the record, I will note that the minutes to tonight's meeting are being kept by City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, and I would ask that she please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney.
Here.
Counselor Bounds.
Here.
Counselor Littman.
Here.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Here.
Counselor Hosmer.
Here.
Mayor Angler.
Wow, unanimous here tonight. All right.
Wow.
So let the record show that all 6 councilors are present tonight and a quorum has been established for this meeting. We'll also note for the record that the council is joined at the front table tonight by City Manager Scott Myers and by our City Finance Director, Donna Woodeman. First order of business is acceptance of minutes from previous meeting. You have before you tonight, councilors, the minutes for our meeting, last meeting on July 9th. Those minutes were distributed to the council on the 11th. The clerk reports no corrections or changes suggested to those, and so unless there are any at this moment, I'm going to declare the minutes to our July 9th, 2018 meeting to be approved as submitted by the clerk. We have no consent and action items tonight, and I'm going to, with the council's permission, going to note that I'm going to ask tonight for a couple of changes to the agenda, to our normal agenda. Since I think we all know what the primary interest in tonight's meeting is, to move things around a little bit to accommodate that at the top of the meeting. So the next item on our regular agenda is for citizen comments on matters not on the agenda. And I think the reason that most of our guests are here tonight is not on the agenda tonight. So in a minute is going to be the appropriate time for anyone who addresses to address the council on that matter. So this is going to be the order I suggest, and I'm going to adopt unless the council objects to it in terms of moving things around. I'm first going to, Councilor Hamel has asked for a point of personal privilege. I'm going to recognize that request and allow him to speak briefly in a moment here. Next, we would ask for citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. Then we're going to move council comments, which is usually at the end of the meeting, up to immediately following public comment. So if there's anyone at the council table who wishes to make a comment tonight, that would be the appropriate time to do it as opposed to waiting to the end of the meeting. And then finally, I'm going to move the mayor's report on the agenda up to following the council agenda. So everything else would stay the same except for those items. All right? So the first thing we're going to get to then is to recognize Councilor Hamel for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to address some comments I made for the July 9th meeting. I'd like to apologize for my comments at the City Council meeting on July 9th. During that meeting, I made remarks about Massachusetts attitudes, which I should not have made, and for that I am sorry. I also alluded to an event that happened a long time ago involving a person who lived in Laconia named Red Dunn. Although I have very fond memories of Red, I should not have brought him up at the meeting. I apologize to his family, and I repeat that apology now for all to hear. I am also mindful that following that meeting, many people were led to believe I disparaged a deceased Laconia firefighter and hero named Mark Miller. I did not make any comments about Lieutenant Miller. I did not allude to Lieutenant Miller, and I did not disparage him or his service, and my highest thoughts are always with those who have serviced and sacrificed. I look forward to continuing working for the city that we all call home and love. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. All right, next up on the agenda then is the time for citizen comments for matters not on tonight's agenda. And the general rules of the council are that people are allowed to address the council, to come to the microphone here in the center of the room, to identify yourself, please, by name and by where you live. And if you're from Laconia, we like to know what ward you live in. And the absolute time limit for those comments is 5 minutes. And it's up to me to generally keep track of that time, which I will do tonight. We were considering, because we didn't know how many people were going to be here tonight, having to make changes to that to fit everybody in. But the list that has been presented to me only contains about 14 or 15 names on it.
One more.
I have one more? Okay. People who wish to speak. So I think we can easily accommodate that tonight. So obviously, we're just asking for everybody to be courteous with everyone else and treat everyone else with respect, including members of council to the public and the public speaking to us. So the first thing I'm going to do tonight is make sure that anyone who wishes to address the council has signed up on this sheet, okay? And I have no idea how many people, or if any, are outside yet still. I know we have someone from the clerk's office outside who still has a list, so that if you still want to sign up, you could still do so and whatnot. But we'll start with the 15 or so names that are on this list tonight, and go from there. But the plan is not to recognize anyone who has not signed up to speak. We don't ordinarily do this, but given the possible extraordinary number of people who might want to speak tonight, we're going to. So, I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, who have signed up to speak, wish to speak on the issue that Councilor Hamill addressed in his remarks. But if there's someone here tonight who wants to address the council on any other matter that's not on tonight's agenda, they would be welcome to do so also. So with the assumption that most of you are here to address that particular issue, since Councilor Hamill represents Ward 5 in our city, I'm going to start by recognizing the people who have signed up tonight who are from Ward 5 and are direct constituents of the councilor. And let's see, we're going to start with Chad Vallencourt, if I'm reading that right.
It's Ward 3 now.
I got the right name wrong? Chad?
I'm in Ward 3, but I'm gladly.
Somebody signed this saying Ward 5. Chad,
That's me, but
I'm sorry?
the 3, Mayor.
Oh, it's a 3. I apologize. I interpreted that to be a 5. So we'll get to you in a second, sir. How about William Drew?
3 as well, sir.
All right, so I see, so Vallencourt is a 3, And Drew is also a 3? Okay, so the only 5 I see there then is Thomas Tardif. Mr. Tardif here.
Outside, sir.
He's on his way in from the other way.
There he is. Back door. Welcome, Mr. Tardif. You are first up, sir.
First of all, I think my
Can
right
you get in front of the
to
microphone,
know
please?
this is a violation, because I couldn't hear a thing out there, and by the right to know, which I gave you a letter that says if the audience can't hear what's being said, you have to adjourn the meeting. Attorney General said so, and I made you aware of that. And I'm doing the best I can with what you're allowing me to do. And I have a lot I'd like to say about what everybody's here for, and I don't know what's been going on in here, so I'm not going to address that
You have a 5-minute time limit, sir.
on anything. No. I've only wanted to talk about item 23C. 23C.
Okay?
That's a resolution regarding RSA 3195B, appropriations for funds made available during the year. I tried to research how it was originally placed on the agenda, but I couldn't find it because the city's website's not user-friendly. However, I did pick up that this item has been on the agenda since 11/23 of 2015, pending a legal opinion or something to that matter. And I'm here to say that this, if this were just a simple resolution,
So, let me interrupt you for just a second. So, I'm sorry. I just want to ask a procedural question here, if it's all right with you. So, this is an item that's on tonight's agenda, and there's actually a public hearing tonight, is there not?
No, this was an item that the council tabled, as Mr. Tardif said, a couple of years ago, and it is just under a future item as a placeholder. It is not being brought forward tonight in any
Oh,
way,
okay.
shape, or
All right.
form.
23, I'm sorry, my apologies. I'm in the wrong part of the agenda. All right, so you're referring to an item that has long been under future agenda items. Okay, go ahead.
reset the clock? I'm kidding you.
This will be like a soccer game. I'll allow you extra minutes.
All right. My opinion is you can't do this by a resolution. This law applies to towns, and towns is a one-man, one vote. And the selectmen put it on the ballot, and the electoral people that vote for it or against it. And it's the same procedure if it needs to be removed. It'll go on the agenda in a town, and they will ask to remove it. It takes the voters to say so. In our case, a city form of government, it's a charter amendment under 49, I'll say 49B specifically. 49B specifically. And if you do that, more power to you. But it has to be reviewed by the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Director of the DRA. And if the voters, just like the towns, if the voters say they want that amendment to our city charter, that's fine, I agree with that. But to go through a resolution process to include in an ordinance, or however you're going to intend to do it, by a vote of just the delegation. I mean, excuse me, I'm thinking of something else, the council. That's not right. So I'm asking you, sometime when you come to make a decision, remove this. It's 3 years old. How long can the voters and constituents track something that all of a sudden, after 3 years, is going to be on the agenda for an action. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, sir.
It's too bad you don't have a speaker outside so we could all hear. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start down the list then next of people who have signed up who have indicated they are Laconia residents, and we're going to start with Sean Valvani. I got that right?
Valvani.
Valvani.
I didn't expect to be speaking so soon. Sean Valvani, Ward 3, Councilor Littman. I've been in the city for about 15 years now. I don't know if you recognize my name. I send emails, letters a lot. I don't know. I'm here to support the fire department about words spoken by Mr. Hamill. I'm not going to speak to them. I don't know what was in his mind. I wish he apologized 13 days ago. I was a little disappointed it took 14 days for him to come out with an apology. It didn't quite seem sincere, but I'm not here to talk too much about that. I'm talking about the whole council as a whole. And remember why we're here. This started when the council came after our EMS system. And as a close family member of mine has used this system twice in life or death situations, and these paramedics back here have saved my wife's life twice, right? And for you guys to open up the bidding process, not listen to Stewart's, not listen to Best Care, not listen to MRI, and go after a Massachusetts company, this is what happened. Everything behind me is when you guys didn't listen to the citizens, didn't listen to the fire department, didn't listen to the EMS services in this town, in this city, this is what happened. You let this blow up and you just kept going and going. And then to come after the fire department's budget very vindictively, when I was watching the meetings here, it was obvious that you weren't voting to protect the citizens of this city. You were voting to cut the fire department budget vindictively, is the way I see it. I don't come to these meetings much. I know you guys have a lot on your plate. I know you work hard, and I know most of you care about the city. You're not here to see citizens hurt, but you're letting your feelings get in the way when you're voting. And it's obvious to everybody out there. And you guys can't let your feelings get in the way of the city. The city is severely undermanned, severely understaffed, both the police and fire department. Thankfully, you guys took care of the teacher problem, but you let these problems go on way too long, and you just, I don't know. I just wanted to come up and say that, I guess.
All right, we thank you.
Yeah.
Cal Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Calvin Dunn of Laconia, Garfield Street. I primarily here, not exclusively, but primarily to defend my family, the Dunn family name. Although Council Hamill did apologize, and I am impressed by that, he failed to mention that he had no fact at all of Red Dunn allegedly walking on water, or even a comment that he heard from Red Dunn himself. So there was a couple facts. At any rate, I wanted to start out on a positive note, if possibly, and I think what I'd like to do is, my father would like to thank Mr. Hamill. Yes, that's right. On top of walking on water, he also talks to me. But at any rate, I'm sincere about it. I know that he would really appreciate it. And I'll tell you why. A couple months before his death, he came to me. He says, Cal, they say that when you pass after 20 years, if you're no longer talked about or thought about, you're pretty much history. It's all forgotten. Well, he says, you think they'll talk about me? I said, yeah, I'm sure they will, Dad. And this June 18th, being his 20th anniversary of death, a mere 2 weeks or so after, before Mr. Hamill's comment. I think it's quite a coincidence, and my hat's off to you, Dad. It isn't that he wasn't never talked about in the past, but boy, in the past couple weeks for his 20th anniversary, it sure is enlightening. So I just wanted to mention a couple other things. He's been called many different types, colorful individual, character, crazy. But the best I think I've ever heard is Red Dunn was a P.T. Barnum of Laconia. He put on the best damn show Laconia ever had. And the Dunn family is entirely proud of that. And while my 8 brothers and sisters have grown up in school being picked on and made fun of about the walking on water deal, which is totally taken out of context, and unfortunately was passed down to my 4 children, my wife and I's 4 children, and why I'm here tonight is because it damn sure isn't going to continue with our 16 grandkids. And if you can't get your facts straight, everybody here, you grown men, it's time to do something about it. It was nice while Red Dunn was here, but it's just his family now, unfortunately. He's long passed. And this was such a big ordeal. Even 20 years ago, Bruce Cheney made a comment in the local paper that perhaps Red can walk on water now. So this was just a big misunderstanding, and you had to understand the man. And I would like to take 2 short examples. I deal with fact. And the only thing I know about it is when I was a young child, pre-teenager, 11 or 12, downtown, walking with my father, there was a group of men that passed by, and one says, "There's that Messiah that can walk on water." And Dad just smiled and waved. And boy, I was infuriated. I says, "Dad, doesn't that bother you?" He stopped dead in his track, and it was hard to break his stride. But boy, he looked at me, he says, "No." He says, "The only time I'm bothered, son, is when they don't say anything about me. If they stop talking about me, then I get really concerned. As long as they're having some type of rapport, that was good," and that's how he was. The last thing I'd like to bring up, again, I was a early teenager, and we were right across the street at Charlie's Diner. A couple men came over and sat down, and they says, "Red, do you really believe you can walk on water?" I says, "Definitely. Absolutely." They says, "Well, geez, we'd like to see that." He says, "Well, I only do it on my birthday." And they says, "Well, we're local. When's your birthday?" He says, "The end of January. I'll go out on that lake and walk on water." So, anyways, we can all have fun with it, but he was a good salesman, and he didn't mind the controversy. But you better watch out for my grandkids. There's a lot of us Dunns around now. And while I do appreciate Council Hamill's apology, I don't mean to just keep picking at it, but at the WMUR segment 2 days afterwards, July 11th, would have been a good time to apologize to the Miller family, the Dunn, the fire department perhaps. But I guess, as they say, better if it's late than never. So I deal with facts, and the facts that I know by reviewing the meeting on July 9th was that Council Hamill did make reference to Jason Griffin, the firefighter. "You guys think you can walk on water," and was putting down the chief. And with the Massachusetts Act's attitude, Bob's done a lot of good. and I think he is a good man for the most part. But the question is, can he continue to deal in the public's eye and with the Laconia Fire Department after those pretty harsh statements? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Your 5 minutes.
Yes, I was just about to thank you.
All right.
Okay?
We appreciate your comment. Thanks. Calvin Dunn. Calvin Dunn III.
Good evening. My name is Calvin Dunn III. I'm a longtime Laconia citizen, third-generation business owner, and I'm also a taxpayer here in the city of Laconia. During Monday night's meeting, when Mr. Hamill did more damage with his words and actions in a near minute 58 seconds than any man I know. I'm not going to go into the whole minute and 58 seconds, but the few comments that he did make about the Massachusetts attitude, the Leah's Dock incident while talking to a firefighter, and then backpedaling, trying to use Red Dunn as a cover-up, that doesn't sit well with me. I had to re-watch this video 4 or 5 times because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, what I was seeing in the video. During a private meeting on Friday the 13th, Mr. Hamill stated that he hadn't left his house since Monday night's meeting because he was afraid and he was too embarrassed to leave his house and his phone was off. He wouldn't have those feelings if he knew his actions and words were appropriate. After an hour and a half, I asked the question at this meeting, where do we go from here? How do we correct this problem? And there was dead silence at that meeting. Nobody had the answer. 2 weeks to the day, Mr. Hamill has done nothing to correct this problem. And there's one reason why he hasn't done anything. That's because there's no way you can correct this problem. I understand he apologized tonight. I think the first thing I would have done is I would have stood before I apologized. But maybe that's just me. Thank you.
Thank you. Cal Dunn III.
Just now.
Okay, next up, we have Chad Vallencourt.
Good evening, folks. Chad Vallencourt, Ward 3. A couple things tonight. I just can't help myself when this whole residency talk came up, because I 100% agree with you. I would love to see firemen, policemen, teachers live in town here. I think we could all agree that I'm not from here, but I've been here for over 20 years, and I'm sure this is a whole different Laconia than what you know, correct? You can't drive down Church Street and Main Street, and I mean, we're all seeing what we all see, and it's a shame. But I used to be a strong advocate when we'd had new firefighters come in, and I'd be like, hey, why don't you move to town? This is great. My kids love it. The school we go to at Pleasant Street, and now the middle school, is second to none. But I can understand why employees don't move here. I really can. It's you can't move to a city where you work for and they're constantly slashing school budgets, cutting public safety for irrigation systems. I truly understood why our employees don't want to move here last year when my name was put in your paper and you basically degraded my name as saying I game an overtime system instead of understanding the system. What you don't know is that I rarely take vacation time. I never call out sick, and I'm there all the time. I would just assume have a thank you instead of calling me a liar, a gamer. I work hard. I work hard for the city. I work hard for my family. I'm a volunteer at the schools. I coach. But I too would love a city where we would have employees live. But then again, what you understand is that if you had a lot of city employees, you would have different faces at this table here. And I hope that you understand and appreciate what I'm speaking of. I would like to see the city move on from this. You know, Councilor Hamill, I understand you've done a lot of good for the city. And if you truly care about the city, I feel like you should resign. You know, I think it's hard to move on from this, and the city needs to move on. Second note, I'm just curious, I heard, on a totally side note, the Colonial Theatre. I had heard the other day that it's over $1 million just in engineering and design. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say it again.
This Colonial Theatre, is it over $1 million already spent in just the engineering and design itself?
Off
It's
the top of my
staggering.
head, I think the design phase of the project was in the $600,000-700,000 range.
Yeah, I mean, it seems astronomical, especially when you're cutting public safety, doesn't it? I mean,
Well,
it seems like
those fees were paid
seems
by-
like you're throwing good money after bad, and I love the project, but you're also cutting public safety
Those fees
and my
are-
safety.
Those fees are paid by the Belknap Economic Development Council, not the city.
Okay, well, at some point, the city, I'm sure, will have to pay something. Anyway, thank you.
You bet. William Drew.
Good evening. William Drew. I own 148 Oak Street. I just wanted very briefly to address the council. I've watched all the last 4 or 5 meetings when privatization was discussed. And the general tone by the council or council members towards the fire department, it was embarrassing to watch. The obvious, the comments towards Chief Erickson and the firefighters. You know, I worked for the city for 17 years. I retired. I was the station captain in the Weirs. You know, I gave a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to this city. And then to watch some of the comments about our tax on retirement system, when we've got members that benefit from the retirement system on your council. And then to see you cut $300,000 out of a budget and then put it towards a sprinkler system. You amended the $300,000 eventually. The comments about how Meredith does it with 1 firefighter. Why does Laconia need 40? Just showed the arrogance, the lack of knowledge. You know, Meredith doesn't do it with 1 firefighter. They do it with multiple. They have 1 paid chief. They have 8 on-call officers and 24 firefighters. And then they pay Stewart's EMS upwards of $125,000 a year. The last year they did 474 calls. Laconia will do more than that in a month. So I don't see how you can make some sort of comparison between Meredith and the city of Laconia. You jumped on the firefighters just assuming that it was them that scuttled the Brewster EMS contract without any knowledge. If you did a little bit of research, you'd realize the history between Brewster and their desire, some of you may already know this, their desire to pick up maybe Manchester and Nashua. And to do so, they have to be established in the state first. My understanding is that one of the ambulance companies put in an analysis showing that it would take upwards of $2 million to staff an ambulance company 24/7 to be the equivalent of what the fire department. for you just to hand it over to Brewster and not even give the fire department a chance. And then when it goes away, you chastise the fire department. And that's obviously what it was. The $300,000 that Mr. Hamill proposed, that was obviously we're going to teach you something, firemen. And then when you called Chief Erickson back in to explain the cuts, your comments were disrespectful. They were embarrassing. If you all haven't watched that meeting, you should go back on the YouTube and watch it. Because some of the faces on the other council members, when the comments were being made, it was clear that you were all embarrassed by those comments. It's just, you want to walk away from this and improve relationships. How do you do that when you make comments like that? You talked about privatization, and there were comments about how many firefighters can we save? How much money can we save? They have 40 firefighters. They certainly don't need them all. And then you wonder why the firefighters are worried about their jobs? If you don't think, those are quotes from you all from that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Miller.
Hi, I'm just going to make this short. I'm Gail Miller. Mark Miller was my husband. I didn't plan on speaking this evening, but I changed my mind once I got here because I just wanted to clarify some things that were brought up over the past couple weeks. I'm not going to go over Mr. Hamill's comments because I think it's important to know that I think Mr. Hamill and I had a discussion with the Dunns. He knows how I feel about his comments. I have said my piece about those. I do feel they were inappropriate for the forum they were at, but I can't be inside his head to know what you were referencing because I'm not familiar with the Red Dunn story. I am now, but that doesn't help how we responded. So with those comments aside, I have some concerns as a taxpayer of Laconia. When I watched that full meeting where the comments were made, to see the context the comments were about, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I have never noticed or paid attention to city politics up until now, because I looked at this and thought, how can I let myself live here and let the fire department be treated like this by the council? I look at it as there's so much anger and I don't even know the words for it. Anger, name calling. There's nobody working together towards a common solution, even though Jason was up here trying to extend an olive branch, to use those words. I feel like there was none of that going to happen. You were going to have your forum to stand there and make your comments to him, which I found was disrespectful to the fire chief, was disrespectful to the Dunns, was disrespectful to Jason and the entire fire department. And it was disrespectful to my family, because if you don't know how we react to comments made with firefighters on the Weirs docks, then you obviously shouldn't represent me, because that was a huge event in my life, and that's where I go with that. So my concern as a taxpayer of the city of Laconia is that how are you going to represent the taxpayers in a fair and unbiased way? When the fire department comes before you, can you put your Massachusetts attitude aside and all of your past history with Brewster and all of these things aside to make a decision for public safety? And it's my public safety, it's their safety, and they are really my extended family, and I care for them deeply. And so I'm here for them, and I'm here for the city of Laconia as well, because we need to make sure that we have people in our corner that are looking at the entire situation with past feelings aside to make a decision that's fair and unbiased towards Laconia Fire, because they deserve a council that's going to look at the entire picture and can make a decision in the best interest of everyone. And that's the only point that I wanted to make here tonight, is that if we can't get past these, then I do feel that you need to resign. I don't feel that your actions were just your words. They're just words. It was feelings and anger, and I don't know where that comes from, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch past meetings because I feel like it's my duty to do so. And like I said, I'm embarrassed that I didn't do it before. So I thank you for your apology. I think if you knew how much the words hurt, and my daughter was the person that posted it, and my daughter is here tonight, and when you went on WMUR, I will make this point, you insinuated, whether you believe it or not, that my daughter clipped that tape to her advantage to make it look like that you were talking about Mark. And that, an apology instead of that comment would have been more appropriate. So that's where I want to leave you with that. And I do believe that we can't move forward from this. Thank you.
Jason, excuse me, Jason Bean.
Hello, I'm Jason Bean. I live in Ward 2, resident and taxpayer for 10 years. Vice President, Laconia Professional Firefighters, IAFF Local 1153, and I'm a fire captain for the city of Laconia. I'll be short. I just want to say a few things. Number one, Mr. Mayor, over the course of the last couple of years, you are on record saying that we game the system. There's no opioid problem here in Laconia. You don't talk about it at Rotary. You really don't seem to have a grasp as to what goes on here in the city. Mr. Hamill, everything has already been spoken. I could echo it, but it's already been said. And with that being said, Mr. Hamill, I would expect your resignation, and Mr. Mayor, I would expect yours. I don't think either one of you represent the city the way you should. And as a taxpayer, I feel free to say that. Thank you.
Carl Wrights.
Good evening. Carl Wrights, Ward 2, Cottonwood Avenue in Laconia. Been here for 50 years or so. 3 kids, all in the schools, all out of schools, thank goodness. But I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and say some general things about Carl Wrights and the City of Laconia leadership team. Our firefighters, our professionals in the law enforcement and public works and so forth. I've seen them all work as you have. You've worked with them as they're trying to do their mission. I've sat where you're sitting. My first seat here at the council table was in 1976. And I've worked locally and with most of you on one occasion or another. And I'd like to say very just simply that Mr. Hamill and I have gone back at least 45 years. And his family and friends and I have worked together on projects. We've sat on councils, not this council, but other community organizations. I've seen him shed his time, his sweat, and effort for the children, for the departments that he's being chastised against. And I've seen him express support and and interest in all of the departments, notwithstanding the fire department. And I know Bob well enough to say that I am absolutely certain that the disparaging remarks that are referred to, where if they were said, were accidental. He hasn't got a bad bone in his body. He's a good leader. He has been. And I think he will continue to be a good leader for the city of Laconia. I'm fortunate enough to be able to say that I've known every fire department chief since 1970. Bud Wool taught me how to fish up in the northern parts of the state with the former owner of the Laconia Hardware Company. And I've known and hunted with and gone to shooting schools with other fire chiefs. Bob Landry, are you here? I taught him how to shoot a rifle. My statement is just simple. I think we have a conscientious, caring, and capable leader here in the city, Bob Hamill, and I'd like to see him remain there with our accolades.
Thank you. Brenda Baer.
Good evening. I came here tonight with the hope that when the meeting is over, that sanity and peace and harmony will be restored to the city. But I don't, after some of the former speakers, I don't think I'm going to get any applause, but that's all right. I love you, Bob. And I'm going to read a letter that I wrote to the paper, but there are so many people here that are not from Laconia. I want them to know something about Bob Hamill. I worked with Councilor Hamill for the last 12 years. I know a little about this man and how he thinks and he acts. He is a tireless worker for the city. He's out and about the city, checking on projects that are going on, finding things that are wrong, things that need doing, and bringing them to the attention of the council and getting things done or corrected. He has never made a mean statement in the 12 years I worked with him. The remark about walking on water was not directed at Fireman Miller, and it was stated so at the meeting. I do know he is a gentleman and respectful of all those he came in contact with and with the members of the council. Besides stepping up and serving the community for 12 years as a councilor, he has devoted much time to doing good works in the community. He has been a huge component of the Christmas Village for 43 years, donating time and money to see that it is a success, working alongside Armand and Ernie Bolduc, bringing much joy to thousands of people over those 43 years. He has delivered Meals on Wheels to the needy, provided transportation for medical appointments, no matter how far away they are. He worked for years alongside Armand Bolduc, helping out with the chores at the Bolduc family farm. He has overseen the building of the middle school and the Hewitt Center. He is responsible for getting our roads more money. He reviewed the transportation needs of the Public Works Department and got rid of ages-old equipment and got it modernized. He oversaw the construction of the new fire department building, and he got things for them that were needed, things I opposed, but Bob saw what was needed, and he followed through. He voted to keep the 4 firemen who came with a grant after the grant ended. I did not. He saw the fire department's need. Bob has been a friend of all the departments of the city. Whenever a volunteer is needed for something, he's the first to step in. I remember one such incident when a few years ago, the Memorial Ballpark was in desperate need of a new storage facility. There wasn't any money available, so it had to be done on a volunteer basis. Bob stepped up along with Armin and a lot of other people from the city and was there helping to construct that new building on the rainiest day you ever saw in your life. There's been much going on between the council and the fire department over the years, and he has tried to find a solution to them. There is much frustration on both sides, and when the union representative got up and singled out the council and Councilor Hamill, it was a natural reaction to finally have to get something out. Perhaps if there had been more interest in what has been going on before this, we would not have this situation now. Let's hope this will come to end by both sides for the good of our city.
Thank you. Dorothy Duffy.
Dorothy Duffy, 47 Whipple Avenue, Ward 4. I'm going to be a totally different speaker because I'm just going to speak as a citizen and a taxpayer. But I couldn't possibly follow what Brenda just spoke about. She covered everything. I have belonged to 2 unions. My son is a member of Local 3, IBEW union. I have the greatest respect for unions. I am very distressed about what is happening here. I don't understand why. I don't understand why we have all of these men behind us here. To me, it's almost like defamation by social media. We're here to stand beside Bob Hamill and all of the other city councilmen. It takes more than one person to vote to pass any budget. Many budgets that come before this council, many have been added to, many have been subtracted from. They know the reasons why. We may not know all of the reasons why. But we also know that they're working with a tax cap, and they're keeping my taxes down as much as they can. I'm one single person living in a house, paying my taxes, and glad I'm alive to pay them. I've been watching and following city council for a number of years. I have the greatest respect for everybody that does this because you cannot be fired, you aren't hired, you don't get paid. You do it, you do a lot that we don't see that you do. And then you go beyond serving your city to serving your community. You are doers, and you are important people. I watch Bob Hamill on city council when I'm sitting in my recliner at home, and I'm thinking, ask the question, ask the question, ask the question I want, He does. And the reason why he does is because before he comes to these meetings, he gets the agenda. He reads everything, I'm sure. He researches. I'm sure that when he comes here, he knows what he's going to be talking about. He knows what he's going to be supporting. And I have the greatest respect for him. I trust him. I just feel so very, very sad to think that he has to go through this kind of abuse, and the rest of you too, all of you, at a time when he is hurting because he's lost 2 wonderful friends. And that bothers me a lot. And the people that are behind me that are not local, the people that were local, I like your comments, I understand your comments. The people that are not local, I don't understand why you're here. Because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you look like a bunch of bullies to me. That's what you look like. You're union members, you're firemen, you deserve the respect. You save lives, you have valor, you should be honored. There are many other professions that also work under unsafe environments and deserve our respect. I wish that you had known what you were doing when you chose to attack this one city councilman. I know that he would not hurt anybody. He's in the mode of helping people. He does not hurt people. I have the greatest respect for him, and I have the greatest respect for this council and anybody else that volunteers their time in support of their community. Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting to our guest list now. And first up on that list is, if I'm reading this correctly, Jay Colbert. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jay Colbert, and I am the District Vice President for the International Association of Firefighters, in charge of the 6 New England states. And one of the charges given to me as a District Vice President is to serve on certain committees. And one of the committees I serve on for the International is the Fallen Firefighters Committee. Every year, the second Saturday in September, the International Association of Firefighters and the 310,000 firefighters across the United States and Canada assemble in Colorado Springs to remember our fallen brothers who died in the previous year. Now, every year, we were out there from anywhere between 130 and 250 men whose names get memorialized on that wall. It's a big deal to us when a firefighter gives his life for the town he serves in, and the people of that town. We memorialize our brothers like no other profession. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say I know what was in Mr. Hamill's heart when he was up here disparaging people. But when I came north from Massachusetts today, along with my Massachusetts attitude, I brought a little bit of cynicism and common sense. And to think that he was disparaging a local union president who was at the podium and then referenced Weir's Beach in an obscure incident that did not happen at Weir's Beach almost 60 years ago, and not the firefighter Mark Miller that we lost 14 years ago, a more contemporary situation, is hard to believe. The indications around this table are that they're very, very anti-Laconia firefighters. I've heard from them. I'm charged with going around my district, protecting the members in my district from attacks from local councils, towns, cities, and this is just the type of situation that gets me out and about in the district. I hope if this thing moves past and the Miller family and the Dunn family and the Laconia firefighters are willing to put it behind, we'll take their lead. But if not, if they think that Mr. Hamill was being disingenuous and was referencing Brother Miller, we will be back up here and we will take it probably to another level. Thank you very much.
William McQuillan.
Good evening. For the record, my name is William McQuillan. I serve as the president of the Professional Firefighters of New Hampshire. I represent some 2,000 firefighters across the state, firefighters and paramedics, dispatchers, including the 36 members here in the city of Laconia. I am here because of the comments and the actions that occurred on the 9th of July here in Laconia. Let's be honest here for a moment. At their worst, those comments were deliberate, they were disgusting, and they were disturbing. At their best, those comments were unbecoming of a public official. I don't need to sit here and lecture you all on what a public servant is supposed to do and how they are to serve their constituents. But I think we can all agree that certainly what happened is not in the best interests of the city of Laconia or for your employees. Certainly as an employer, you have an obligation to treat your employees with respect. We've heard a lot about respect tonight, and the mayor spoke about respect. And I would encourage you to look at the definition for respect, but most importantly, at the second definition as a verb, and to think about doing no harm. And those words, they inflicted harm. However, as elected officials, I'm hopeful that tonight you can do something about this, that you can take a vote of censure, and that you will make sure that those comments, that as horrible as they were, or as unbecoming as they may have been, that whatever they were, that they don't represent this city as an employer or this city as a whole. You know, this city opened itself up not more than a month ago to guests of all stripes, and certainly put its best foot forward in this state when it hosted Bike Week. But now, what is this city known for? It's known for some harmful comments that hopefully some leadership here on this council will take, and you will censure Mr. Hamill. Thank you.
Edward Kelly.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Edward Kelly. I serve as the General Secretary Treasurer of the International Association of Firefighters, representing over 300,000 firefighters throughout North America. People who put their lives on the line every day, just like the firefighters here in Laconia, just like Mark Miller, who sacrificed his life for the people of Laconia. Now, I watched that video, Councilor Hamill, and I read the comments that Mark's daughter, Kelsey, wrote. And I'd like to quote her. "To hear Councilman Hamill mock the death of my father, who protected this city for as long as he did, is truly disgusting. My dad did whatever he could, regardless of what others said, to protect the people of the Lakes region. He died a hero and will always be a hero. Please share this so everyone can see who is representing the city of Laconia. Seems it might be time to find a new body to replace Councilman Hamill, as he is clearly not able to express his opinions in a mature and professional manner." Now, I listened to your apology, sir. We are by and large good God-fearing people that believe in redemption. But redemption has to be genuine. I listened to Curtis speak about his interpretation of your apology. I listened to Mark's wife educate me as to how you inferenced in an interview that Kelsey somehow manipulated your comments to fit her narrative. Well, don't underestimate our loyalty. Don't underestimate our devotion to dead firefighters. And it might be time for this IAFF and the $70 million budget that they give me to govern educates the people of Laconia to the character of those people that are representing them on this council. I make no mistake about it. I'm sure you chose your words poorly. I'm sure you regret that you're in this box. But the fact of the matter is this. It was your tone and attitude towards the Laconia firefighters that painted that picture. We will never, ever forget our fallen, and we will fight for their legacy. Thank you.
Okay, the last name that I have on the sign-up sheet is Dustin Holmes. Or Dustin Holmes here? Yes.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I originally thought that was just a sign-in sheet of who was coming to this meeting, but I do have a few words to say.
Now you're speaking extemporaneously.
Regardless of who Mr. Hamill was referencing, that person was still a taxpayer of this city, and he degraded him and demoralized his character, whether it was Mr. Miller or Mr. Dunn. And I think that's unacceptable for an elected official that's here to represent the taxpayers of this city. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Sorry, sir.
I signed one of these papers as I come in, so I don't know how many sheets you have in front of you.
What's your name, sir?
Mark McKenzie.
Oh, I probably missed you. I apologize. Yes, I do see it here. Mark McKenzie.
I've been missed before. So let me introduce myself. My name is Mark McKenzie, and I am currently a state representative in the state of New Hampshire, and I serve in the House Labor Committee. And I'm probably the only one in this room who was there when they passed the collective bargaining agreement, at the collective bargaining law in 1975. I worked on that law with a good friend of mine, Tommy Houghton. And I also, over the course of the years, have worked with Mr. Cheney and the Senator on a variety of bills that affect working families in the state. And I come here to say this. The first words of the bargaining law 275A say that it is intended to promote harmonious relationships between employees and employers. And I can say that just looking at the tape, and I'm not going to draw a lot of conclusions except to say this, that in that context, the suggestion that the union, which was the first word that was mentioned here, your union, and it was said in a way that really contributed, I think, to some of the problems that we have right here and now. My union, I was a member I continue to be a 44-year member of the professional firefighters and the Manchester firefighters, having spent 27 years as a fire officer and a fire captain in the city. So I'm not new to this, and I'm not new to collective bargaining, and I'm not new to councilmen and other people, and I'm not new to comments that have been made. But what I don't see here, as somebody who spent a lifetime in public government, testifying hundreds of times in the state legislature, I don't see any solution offered by this council. There's an apology that has been offered, but there is no solution, no way to get from where you are now to where you have to be. So absent that, the only way that you can deal with this is to call for your resignation. My suggestion to you, if you really care about the future, and I'm doing this based on the history I've had with labor relations in the state, if you really care about that, before you leave this room tonight, figure out how it is that you're going to deal with this situation and heal the wounds that have been caused by the words that have come out of this, that have come to this today. Because failure to do so, I'm absolutely convinced, and don't underestimate my brother from the International when he says that we will be prepared, and they are, and I've seen that. But you don't want to get there. But let's get to a place where you can bring back the respect, bring back the dignity, build on a relationship that is in the best interests of everybody in this community. Because everywhere I go, for all the years I've done this, these are not new issues. We face these issues over and over and over again, and I can tell you this, they're not going to get any better. The ability to deliver the services to our communities, it's going to get worse, not better. And if we're not all on the same page and we're not plunking away together, then I think it's going to be a serious problem for all of us. So my hope, and Mr. Hamill, you know, you've had a lot of people say good things about you. I don't know what was in your mind. I don't know the truth, but you do. And so whatever that is, understand that we have to, all people in this state have to move together forward. And if that is getting in the way of that happening, then I think you've got to deal with that. But I hope whatever you do, I've worked with these people. I know these people. I know that they can figure out ways to get good solutions. But we got to move forward, and if that means you have to resign, then you have to resign. But that's your decision to make, not the kid from Manchester. You guys got to make it. I thank you for the opportunity to be in front with you. I will stand with my brothers, as I have for all of these years. I will stand with the leadership of this union, and I ask that you listen carefully to what was said by many of the people here, and don't underestimate the potential of this brotherhood standing with people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I apologize again for overlooking your name on the list. That is the last name that I have on the list for people who asked to address the council tonight. So did I miss another name?
No. I didn't see the paper, man.
Well, we'll make an exception for a former mayor,
Thank you.
Mr. Fraser.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be back in the chamber. I'm not here to talk about that issue. I'm here to talk about the ambulance. I want to give you all some historical perspective. When I was on the council in 2002, we faced the issue of privatization of the ambulance. In my 12 years between council and mayor, it was the single biggest issue to the people of this city. They did not want to take it away from the fire department, and I believe that is still their attitude. So my suggestion tonight is, you all decide that you're going to work with them. You decide you're going to work with them. If you have to create a fire commission to be an intermediary, do it. But get it resolved and keep it in the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, former Mayor Mark Fraser. All right, so we are now closing citizen comments on matters not on tonight's agenda, and we're going to move, as I indicated earlier, to council comments, which generally comes at the end of our meeting. So the floor is open to any member of the council who wishes to address this, or I guess any other subject. Councilor Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and guests, I regret, and I suspect Councilman Hamel regrets, the analogy he used on July 9th. I've known Councilman Hamel for close to 40 years, and although he and I have never been socially friendly, I've always considered him a kind and considerate man. The list of the civil contributions he has made is lengthy. But we're not here tonight to talk about his contributions. Rather, we're here to discuss his choice of words and the reaction to those words. At the July 9th meeting of the City Council, Councilman Hamel got into a discussion with the president of the Firefighters Union. Union President Griffin suggested the need to communicate and repair the relationship between the firefighters and the council. In the course of that discussion, Councilman Hamel made reference to someone attempting to walk on water, and several folks immediately assumed he was referring to Fire Lieutenant Miller. Within seconds of the president sitting down, Councilman Hamel spoke up to say he was not referring to a fireman, but rather to Red Dunn. After the council broke for a non-meeting, and I'm not still sure what those are, Councilman Hamel went over to the remaining firefighters and explained again that he was not referring to Lieutenant Miller, but rather to an alleged incident involving a popular, if sometimes unusual, character of days gone by. On July 10th, at about 5:07 p.m., someone posted, almost 24 hours after the discussion, a post on Local 1153's website, which gave just over 3 minutes of the discussion, but left out Councilman Hamel's correction about who he was referring to. I checked the union's Facebook post, and it was 2 minutes and 21 seconds, and that post also neglected to mention his correction. The result was a number of letters and posts lashing out at Councilman Hamel in righteous indignation based on the cropped version of the meeting. There may be grounds to criticize the councilman's comments, but that criticism should be on what he said, not what someone wishes to imply in the recount of the meeting. The union and President Griffin are entitled to their own opinions about the meeting, but they are not entitled to their own facts. The fact is, Councilman Hamel made it very clear he was not criticizing Lieutenant Miller. My deepest disappointment is that in the union post of the meeting was the statement which read in part, quote, "trying to take the high road in an attempt to have an open conversation. Here is what transpired," end quote. Unfortunately, what was attached was a short version of what transpired, a version that did not include a very salient point. Councilman Hamel needs to be more careful in his choice of words and his analogies going forward if we are to have an open conversation. But President Griffin has to be fair and honest in his criticisms if he truly wishes to have an open discussion. I hope after tonight we can all take a step back, calm down, and take a deep breath. Once we've done that, we can hopefully move forward in a positive fashion. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other councilman wish to make a statement? Councilor Lippman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd like to focus on the moving forward part. I believe that the council is here to help the community. I feel that the Laconia Fire Department's here to help the community. We're not here to hurt one another. That's not actually been the result of our work over the last number of years and decades. We do know that words hurt, and there's a lesson here in terms of what's transpired. I think we've heard you. I think Councilor Hamel's heard you. I do ask that we do try to move forward in two ways. I think it's time to get back to the table in small groups and try to work on working together like we have with many other issues in the city here. We do need, though, to, there was a comment made about social media and things. I think we got to be careful that our concerns and words don't approach bullying or harassing. Someone should feel comfortable to be able to go out in the community, and I think surely the point's been made, and I think it's time to back off on some of those campaigns, if you will. I'd like to suggest that the people of Ward 5 will have an opportunity to decide whether Councilor Hamel should continue to serve on election time. The discussion that came up was during a resource allocation decision in a budget process. It got overheated, that's for sure. On the other hand, this council has invested quite a bit in terms of trying to improve things. From my own perspective, former Mayor Fraser talked about the hospital and the ambulance service indirectly. I worked there many years and worked with the firemen to preserve that option. Unfortunately, that option of the hospital and the fire department working together isn't still on the table. We got to try to find a new solution. I think we can start over and work on that. I hope that you do accept Councilor Hamill's words and that we can forgive here. He is a good man. I've worked with him. He's compromised in many instances. You know, I don't know of anybody that does more for the city than he does. I'm friends with the Miller family. Her parents live 3 houses down from me. I care deeply about them. All I can say is I'm committed here, and I'm sure my fellow councilors, to work towards healing the situation. We don't want to hurt each other any further than we already have. And I'm committed to moving forward to work on a more productive relationship. And thank you for coming out and respectfully having this hearing tonight. You've been heard.
Anyone else wish to make a statement? Councilor Bounds.
I'm going to be brief.
You're going to be brief up next to the microphone.
But in a very distant way. I want everybody to try to listen to each other, not try to forge their own truths, their own lies about what happened and where we're at. The fact is that the city of Laconia and the firefighters have worked together for a very long time. And the fact is that Councilor Hamill has gone out of his way to help the city firefighters in any way they could. The new station, the employees. I want you to listen to that. Not asking you to like him or dislike him. I want you to listen to what he's done. I want the council to listen to you. I'm trying to listen, but I'm a little nonplussed when I'm told that I shouldn't underestimate folks. I don't want to underestimate you. You know, I'm a union guy for a long time, and I've been supporting unions since my father taught me that when I was in high school. So I want to work together. I want the inflammatory stuff to stop. It's not going to accomplish anything. We have an opportunity to take this to a better place. Let's try to do that. Thank you.
No, go ahead. I'm rookie.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, have we decided?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unbeknown, I was chastised in a local talk show for not saying anything. At the time, Bob knows this, that first thing Tuesday morning after the council meeting, him and I had a personal conversation, okay? And it's going to stay that way, personal. I just wanted to hope that this would go away. And I hear all of you, but I was just hoping, and I said to my wife, this is not the atmosphere that we want young families to move into. And we just need to move on. And that's all I'd like to say.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Councilor Hosmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, fellow councilors, Mr. Mayor, as well as all of you who've come here to the chambers tonight to express yourselves. I certainly share the views of my fellow councilors to the extent that the time has come to end this most unfortunate chapter in Laconia city politics. Ordinarily, I support the tension that comes out of vigorous debate because I think it has positive results. But unfortunately, if it becomes personal on either side, it becomes dysfunctional and those positive results are sacrificed. This incident, unfortunately, has maligned our firefighters, our mayor, our city council, and it's pitted citizens of our city against one another. I think what's particularly unfortunate is that it's been fueled by rumors, falsehoods, and theories of personal vendettas. Caught up in all of this are the people that both councilors and firefighters have sworn to serve. The people of Laconia. Certainly, the longer this continues, the more challenging it becomes for both of us, councilors and public servants, to fulfill their obligations. I know Councilor Hamill to be a hardworking and committed city councilor. We didn't agree on the budget. I voted against him. But I take him at his word when he apologizes and he offers an explanation for his choice of words. It may have been a poor choice of words, shared during an emotional exchange, but I do not believe Councilor Hamill was being malicious or vindictive. Councilor Hamill, like every one of us in this room, is human. And I think we should all take a step back and realize that. But make no mistake, personal attacks on the fire chief and our professional firefighters in a public forum can't be condoned. In politics, it's all too common. We've come to expect these personal attacks. Unfortunately, whether leveled at public employees or elected leaders, these are toxic and lead to extreme dysfunction. If we let this occur, who pays? Again, it's the people of Laconia, the people that we've sworn to serve. I think right now is a good time to have a cooling off period. I think both sides should cease public comment, whether it's in the traditional media or on social media. I'd ask our professional firefighters to consider that the mayor and the councilors are stewards of the city. It's our responsibility to balance the public safety needs with sound fiscal processes that respect the taxpayers. I appreciate that the services the professional firefighters of Laconia provide reflect the city and the people that you serve. We have an aging population, old buildings with absent landlords. We're struggling with opioids and behavioral health challenges, just to name a few of the challenges that you face every single day, and we should all be aware of that. These factors stretch your resources to an extent unheard of in cities throughout this state. I think repeating these events during our next budget cycle will erode public confidence and our city's good reputation. As we saw in our 125th birthday celebration, there's a tremendous amount to be proud of in this city. Its people, its history, and I think we can feel very good about the future of this city. I know we all serve, whether you're professional firefighters, public employees, city councilors, because we care about our fellow brothers and sisters. Those that we serve look to us to lead with civility, a sense of conscience, and a commitment to making our city the best it can be. This we can do and must do. But first, it's time for us to get back on the high road, to deal with each other respectfully, to be good listeners, and to realize we serve others. We should continue to lead them and let them believe that the future in this city is great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and my colleagues.
Councilor? May I assume, since each of you have spoken, there are no more council comments for tonight on some other subject? Okay, it's traditional on our agenda to have a mayor's report later on in the agenda, and I said I would move that up to tonight, and my intent was to address the primary issue before us tonight, and I can't imagine, nor can I imagine any of you could think at this point in time that I have anything to add to what's already been said, or that wouldn't be repetitive of everything that's already been said. Reflecting a little bit on Councilor Lippman's comments, I think that if I had a wish, it would be that we can find a way to make public policy, to discuss public policy, to discuss our legitimate differences over public policy in a better way. And I think that's what got us into this fix to begin with, is I think at the heart of all this were legitimate discussions to be had about the operation of the fire department, the operation of the emergency medical service, et cetera, et cetera. And somehow all of us on both sides, myself included, let perhaps our emotions get the better of us at times over those policy-making decisions. And that led that night on July 9th to a situation where there was obviously considerable friction in the room about the passage of the fire department budget and the issue of the potential privatization of the ambulance service that preceded it in the weeks before. The one thing I did want to add tonight, because I think it's extremely important to me personally, when I, right after the incident, was asked by a number of people from the media to comment on what had happened on the 9th, I took a few minutes to think about it seriously, about knowing that my words could have ramifications. What does the mayor think of the situation, et cetera? And like Councilor Haynes mentioned, I too had private conversation with Councilor Hamel, and he knows what my private words have been to him and my private counsel to him, and I will keep that between the two of us. But what I publicly said is that Councilor Hamel is a good man first and foremost, and I want to repeat that tonight. And a number of us, most of us, all of us who know Councilor Hamel know that to be the truth. And as one of the several of you have noted beforehand, that doesn't mean that Councilor Hamel is perfect or any of us are perfect and that we don't make mistakes, because we obviously all do. What I said was that, like all of us, he is accountable for the things he said. And I think he has taken responsibility for those remarks and what he said earlier tonight. Yes, I think that he said some things on that night, and he said them in ways that night that some of us would perhaps take exception to and think there was a better way of saying it, or a different time to say it, or a better forum to say it. But that's not what happened, and he has taken responsibility for what he said that night. What's troubling to his friends, however, and I certainly count myself in that number, is that he is being asked to answer for things that he not only did not say, but did not even think. And that is just plain unfair. I obviously was sitting here that night and heard the exchange between him and Mr. Griffin. And I have gone back and listened to the tape many times myself to make sure that what I thought I heard is actually what I heard. Sometimes it's not, or I missed something. And after looking at the tape, listening to the tape, watching the tape, and reviewing the transcript of what was said at the tape, there is no question in my mind, not the tiniest percentage of question in my mind, that Councilor Hamel did not have Mark Miller in mind when he made those remarks. To me, there's not a shadow of doubt to that. And I think those of us who know Bob believe that. For one thing, I can mention as an aside, Bob and I are contemporaries as far as age is concerned. I'm a little bit older than he is, but not all that much. And when he used the words a long time ago, I can tell you that someone who's our age does not believe that 2004 was a long time ago. I had no idea when he said those words what he was referring to. I didn't live in Laconia at the time. I didn't grow up here. I had no idea what he was talking about. But I also want to point out that I, sitting here looking at Mr. Griffin, who was standing there where many of you stood tonight, could tell that Jason Griffin's reaction to what Councilor Hamel said was genuine and immediate. There's no question in my mind. I don't think that was a setup in any way, shape, or form or whatever. I think his reaction to that was immediate and genuine, as I said, and he believed, given the circumstances, given what the subject matter was, he believed that that's what the reference was being made to our Lieutenant Mark Miller. And as Councilor Cheney has indicated, there was significant commotion in the audience that night, which you couldn't see on the TV behind the situation, and it was obvious to all of us sitting up here that there was a miscommunication, or whatever you want to say it. There was an interpretation. And as Councilor Bounds has pointed out, Councilor Hamel immediately, or I think it was Councilor Cheney, immediately caught on to what was being said. I, who have a hearing impairment, did not. I could tell people were talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. But others did and understood that the conversation being had in the audience had to do with, did he mean Mark Miller? Because obviously he didn't mention Mark Miller's name. So there was immediate comment that no, that's not what he was talking about. And then, as was mentioned earlier during a break in our meeting, a few minutes later, Councilor Hamel actually went out into the audience and spoke with the members of the fire department who were in the audience to reassure them that his comments had made no reference to Lieutenant Miller. And I think, as has been said before here tonight, what is troubling to us is that when I left the meeting that night, also based on conversation that was held after the meeting was over here in this chamber and out of the sight of cameras, I believed that while what was said that night and what was done that night in terms of the budget was certainly going to be cause for future discussion in the community, to put it mildly, that we had put the specific interpretation of that one remark about Weirs Beach and water behind us, in the sense that Councilor Hamel clearly was not talking about Mark Miller. So my wish, again tonight, and yet, as has been said, within 24 hours there was a video posted online that does not mention Mark Miller's name in any way, shape, or form, nor reference in any specific way his tragic death in 2004. For those of people who saw that video and were invited to view that video, who do not live here and do not know all the circumstances, it was interpreted for them that this is what he was saying, or this is what he was meant. And our objection to that video, which is still up online, and the interpretation of it is that narrative that went with the video is false to our belief, for those of us who were here that night and heard him talk. And I think that's we need to get that part of us behind us. There's plenty of room here for disagreement on matters of public policy, in terms of who should be handling the ambulance service, or what the fire budget should be, and how many people should staff the department, and how much they should be paid, and what the overtime budget should be, and all that sort of thing. There's perfectly room for further discussion on that issue. But I think, as a matter of good faith, we need to get this Lieutenant Mark Miller issue behind us, and realize, all of us, that that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is matters of public policy.
So I can't reply to that, since my family
All right.
was accused of the video.
So thank you. I'm sorry?
Say one comment, and it's not a bad comment, I just want to say one thing.
She wants to say
I
something.
can hear somebody is saying something, but I can't hear it.
Ms. Miller would like to speak just
It's
for a
just
moment.
one small comment that I can't overlook.
Does anybody have any objection on the council to Ms. Miller having another?
No.
All right.
No.
One comment.
One comment.
So I'm a little offended by the video comment, because that was made by my daughter. And perhaps if Councilor Hamel knew how the fire department interpreted that video, he should have told my family what he intended by those comments. So my daughter did not post a video when she watched the meeting and saw those comments. And that's all I want to say. We have been chastised for this video as well, saying we're a political ploy for the fire department, which is not the case. I am myself. I have feelings. We had feelings regarding your comments. I apologize for my feelings because apparently I have to apologize for those. But let me just say something. The video was posted as a matter of emotion and reaction. It was not cut to make the fire department look in a certain way. It was an emotional reaction, just as your reaction was an emotional reaction with your comments. So to be told that we did something wrong for that video and our reaction, it is hurtful. It's hurtful. And I want to respond to it because people keep referring to it as it's a bad thing. And I commend my daughter for doing it. I commend her because you know what? That is her father. And if that's the way she interpreted it, I'm thankful for that because she has a lot of respect for the job that her father did. And I will never chastise her for doing that. But I will not sit here and listen to people say how a video was intentionally posted. It's not correct. We had an emotional response to the video as well. And that, maybe it caused problems for you. And like I told you in the meeting, I don't wish for anybody to wish you harm or to post negative things about you. I don't. I don't know you. I've heard you're a very kind man, but I'm not here because you're a kind man. I've heard you've done wonderful things. I'm here because I have a legitimate concern about the comments. So I've defended our reaction, but I hope you look at it and you see that I've also put on my Facebook page, please watch the entire council meeting, make your own judgments. I have not posted my opinion online. I want everybody in the city to make their own opinions of what should happen because that's exactly what should happen. People need to care, they need to get out there. But please don't put it out there at a council meeting saying that this video was posted as a negative. It looks very negative from my family, and I don't think that that's the appropriate avenue to take either, because we were harmed by these comments. They're hurtful. And to see Mark's face on the paper for the last week, we didn't ask for these comments to be made. We didn't ask for the public's reaction. This is just where we are today because of words. So thank you for allowing me to speak. But that was not an intentional.
My apologies to you and your daughter if my remarks were offensive. I had no idea who posted that video. All I know is where it was posted. All right, so we're going to move on with the rest of council business tonight. We'll take a second here for those of you who want to exit.
This job ain't worth worrying about how much money they're gonna spend.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Hey, you. Baby. Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm not. No. I'm too old for that. Oops, sorry.
Well, they put wheels on these things.
What do you got for socks?
Well, I put my bullseyes on tonight, huh? Is that apropos?
It's gutsy. It's what it is.
Drag out my manager's report tonight. Like 45 minutes of manager stuff to talk about. Maybe an hour.
Oh, I only have a minute.
All right, Mark, let's you and I get the business done. We'll be out of here in 5 minutes. We'll have a coup. We'll have a little power play here.
Speaking of this, I don't understand what this is doing on the agenda again in terms of the sewer thing. What policy? Hey, Bob, how are you?
Good job. It was the manager's fault.
Usually is.
That's why we get the big bucks, Bob.
You know, I came tonight because the fact is there are a lot of us that are giving us, you don't always say that.
I'll go see you.
It's just this, I watched the weather.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Reading in the paper, and I just, and I think I was standing next to you. Just, it doesn't seem to be it's not over. It just, I just don't know how it frustrates me. Because I care about the city and I care about the people who live here. And obviously I understand the feeling that they have, but I also understand that they're only talking dollars and cents. There are a lot of people in this city things you want to do, but there's only so much to do. And then these guys in the front row, they can't, like that kid. Well, but it came in, and to me, I saw that as trying to be powerful.
Your job, that's how they get put in those positions to come defend jobs and fight battles.
But isn't the way to do this is to get, is not to fight a battle, but to try to figure out how two people are trying to do the same thing.
What happens on the local level, these guys, and the national and the regional, they get called in to be the power speakers and be the bull.
Yes, I don't see that makes things better.
Disagree.
And I just, I wish, I hear so much that we just have to get over. Just, whether it's here, there, or elsewhere. All you do is turn on the news. And, I just said that I was going to clean up Compton. That's what I did.
That is good. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. Don't leave on our account.
I used used to stay for the late meetings when I was younger. Chief?
Hey, how are you?
Well spoken.
Just slip by here.
Yeah.
Our discussion helped me write that. Thank you.
Is the ice arena in
I
your-
probably wouldn't have been
Yes. All right. I got it.
aware that I should
Hasn't nothing to
make
do
some
with the ice
punch.
arena.
The ice arena?
No.
Not just local guidance, if you haven't mentioned it. I thank you for that.
That was well balanced.
What do I do with that?
Point across.
Got a pencil?
I hope.
A woman named Rose Whittier. She lives at 191 Cotton Hill Road. It's right on the intersection of, it's right on the intersection of Frank Bean Road and Cotton Hill Road. And this has been a couple weeks ago that I went out and talked to her. She called me. Told the situation and lots of crap going on. I just kind of forgot. What the situation is, and I think she said her husband, she's Hispanic and has a pretty thick accent. I had a hard time.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I know them.
So Country Club Road comes down like this, and there's a jog, and it comes out like this. It's Cotton Hill Road here, and she lives right here.
Managing you is getting more difficult.
Adopt a spot flower.
I now get elbowed by the manager. Tell him to get closer to the mic.
She's concerned.
Pick up some more Kleenex, obviously, for next week.
For about the last year and a half, for reasons that I don't understand, my eyes just keep watering.
Apparently some years ago, somebody ran out there on City House.
Well, I guess it's part of being old, you know.
She has been years fighting.
I guess I do understand what it's all about.
You know, the thing that's wrong, our parents don't sit us down and say, here's how it's gonna go bad for you. You know, they never tell you. Right. Sure doesn't work. And your father goes, I could have told you.
I could have told you.
Now's not the time, Dad. Beforehand would have been good.
So I'd like you to go and talk to her.
Okay. Anyway,
Yep.
we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I know who they are.
No, you don't.
All right, we're just missing Henry?
And Bob.
Henry and Bob.
Bob's right there. He was downstairs when I was
Phone, so he's walking this way.
Okay.
Now, so he's on the walkie-talkie.
Somebody said that Nextel, remember Nextel?
So are we going back to nominations, appointments, and
One of the
elections?
companies, AT&T or one of them, is
Yes.
bringing that
Okay.
back. That's good technology, actually.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after a brief recess, we're going to call this meeting back to order, please. And note that we are on item 11 now on the agenda, nominations, appointments, and elections. We have several before us tonight. First up concerns the Heritage Commission. At our last meeting, we interviewed Michael Sweet. He is seeking appointment to an alternate member position on the Heritage Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2021. A motion would be in order to make that appointment. Counselor Haynes makes the appointment. Counselor Hamel seconds the appointment. Any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Michael Sweet as an alternate to the Heritage Commission, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up, we're talking about the Lakeport TIF Advisory Board. And we have an application from Richard Allen to seek one of the vacant positions as a regular member of the Lakeport TIF Advisory Board for a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2021. And I would recognize Counselor Hosmer to make that motion.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Counselor Cheney seconds that motion. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Richard Allen to the Lakeport TIF Advisory Board, please raise a hand. Counselor, Counselor Cheney?
I'm sorry, I thought I...
Yes. Are you a yes, sir?
I am.
You are. All right, thank you. We have 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries. Something about that end of the table over
Yes,
there. I
it's
don't
the
know.
manager. He causes the...
Well, it's
All right,
I'm glad to hear it's not me.
No, not yet.
Next up, we're talking
Soon
about the
enough.
Conservation Commission. Deborah Williams spoke with us on at our last meeting, and she is seeking appointment as a regular member of the Conservation Commission, a reappointment, I'm sorry, as a regular member of the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2021. A motion would be in order to appoint Deborah Williams to another 3-year term on the Conservation Commission. Someone, Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Very good, thank you. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries as well. And we have 2 more. Next up, the same gentleman for both of these, Michael Foote, appeared before us seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for another 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2021. I believe that's in Ward 1. Counselor Cheney, would you like to make that nomination? He does. Is there a second? Counselor Hosmer seconds the motion. All those in favor of appointing Michael Foote to another term on the Zoning Board of Adjustment, please raise their hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, the same Michael Foote is seeking also reappointment to a regular member position, as a regular member of the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2021. So Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that nomination has been approved. Okay, public hearings. We have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is with regard to Resolution 27, 2019 Law Enforcement Opiate Abuse Initiative Grant. And that resolution, its entirety, is printed on page 38 and 39, or I'm sorry, on page 39 of your packet, and will be taken up tonight under new business, or I'm sorry, unfinished business. And so we need to hold a public hearing about this tonight, and a notice of that public hearing was made in the July 11, 2018 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun. It was also posted at City Hall, at the Community Center, the Laconia Public Library, and the SAU office. The grant is funded by the state of New Hampshire, and there is no municipal match required. So I will open the public hearing at 8:58 p.m. and ask if there's anyone tonight who wishes to offer testimony to the City Council on the passage of Resolution 27. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at the same hour, 8:58 p.m., and we'll move on to the next public hearing, which has to do with Resolution number 26, and has to do with a acceptance of a Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, again for the Police Department. The notice of this public hearing was made in the July 11, 2018 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at City Hall, the Community Center, the Public Library, and the SAU office. There is no fiscal impact for this grant, which will be taken up tonight, again under unfinished business, and it does not require a local match. Is there anyone here tonight who would, I'll open the public hearing, I'm sorry, at 8:59 p.m. and ask if there's anyone here tonight who would offer public testimony to the council with regard to Resolution 28. No one? All right, I'll close the public hearing at 8:59 p.m. And again, note for the record that both of these items will be taken up tonight, again, under unfinished business. We have no presentations tonight. Committee reports, I know that we had originally a committee meeting scheduled for tonight of Lands and Buildings, and that was postponed. Counselor Hamel, do we have a new date for that?
I do not. I'll get with Pat Wood and see what his schedule looks
Okay,
like.
so we don't need to address that tonight?
No.
All right, any other committee business before the council tonight? No? How about liaison reports? Anyone have a liaison report on the council tonight? Okay, Counselor Hosmer, I heard that you attended your first Motorcycle Week Association meeting.
I did. It was excellent. I think some of the final numbers are still being put together. So I think it might be premature to go over those right now, but certainly in the coming weeks, we'll go over the numbers. But yes, I did, and I think by all estimates, there was a great deal of success certainly associated with the week this year.
Good. All right, next up is citizen comments. Citizens comment on current agenda items. Is there anyone in our audience tonight who wishes to address the council on a matter that is on tonight's agenda? Representative St. Clair.
Thank you. I just want some direction here. We're on the agenda for the traffic.
Where, sir?
For the traffic plan, myself and Anthony Sandegate. So I didn't know if you wanted us here now to ask questions about
All right,
this.
let me address that to the council. So,
Okay.
so these two gentlemen are here tonight to address item number 20C, temporary traffic order having to do with Laconia Bike Timber Fest. So the question is, do you wish them to address the issue now or speak to it now, or do you wish to have them available for presentation and comment when we get to that on the agenda? Any preference?
Get them out of here earlier. Yeah, no.
Oh no, we won't leave until you, no. I'm fine waiting.
Look at the tie is.
All right, so why don't you make the presentation now?
Now? Okay.
And then you can leave if you like.
No, I won't leave. So this, I believe you've all gotten a copy of this map here? Okay. So the area impacted by this, which is basically a block party, would be on Lakeside Avenue between Tower Street and Foster Avenue. This area would be closed off to traffic. Traffic would be detoured. If you were heading towards Scenic Road, you would go up. You could make a left turn on Tower Street, a right turn on Maple Street, and another right turn on Foster Ave, and then a left turn on Scenic Road, or Lakeside Ave at that point. And it would be just the opposite, coming the other way. So obviously the purpose of this is to generate some business. We all know that summer ends much too quickly around here. And this time period would be from Friday afternoon from 5 p.m., more than likely till 1 a.m. The barricades, which would be probably bicycle racks, would be removed at that point, and the traffic would be opened up for the rest of the night. And then again, Saturday morning, they'd be put back up, come back down early Sunday morning after midnight. And then again, on Sunday morning, they'd go back up and they would stay up until 5 o'clock. The idea is to have, you see where the green area is right there in those parking spots, there'd be a stage right there for bands. With the city's permission and guidance from liquor enforcement, alcohol would be able to be consumed in this closed-off area of Lakeside Avenue. In other words, a block party, just like it sounds. All the establishments there that serve alcohol, there's approximately 4 of them there. I think I'm right on that. This would not include Weather Vane, because Weather Vane does not have an entrance onto that part of Lakeside Avenue. Those establishments would, if they agree to it, would be allowing people to come and go with alcohol. Alcohol would also be sold out in tubs out in the street. This is something that goes on in other areas
I think they do this, the city manager can help me with this. I think they do this in Hampton Beach, the similar situation with their Chowder Fest. I don't know, I've never been to it.
The entire Ocean Boulevard is closed down for the Seafood Festival, and there is an area there that has a beer tent within the closed-off street, but it's defined to that one area.
Right, and this would be obviously in that same area. Again, liquor enforcement, it's not their call to allow this. This would be up to the city council as far as the alcohol consumption would be. Liquor enforcement would be the one to make sure that rules were followed with regards to people, you know, being carded. I know that the plan is to have wristbands on everybody to make sure that they're 21 years old in that area. And again, the establishments can go along with that or not go along with that. They would have, normally they all have staff at their entrances to enforce their own house rules, and that would still go along with that. But the main reason we're here tonight is again, for the traffic plan itself. We would still obviously have to go before the technical review board, if that's what it's still called, to make sure everything was agreed to. We've spoken to both the fire chief and chief of police, who have indicated they're okay with this. However, things would still have to be, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted to make sure everybody was happy with the situation. The only needs from the city, which would be taken care of by the LLC that's been formed for the block party section of itself, would be extra police for details and probably work with Public Works, and that would be paid for by them. The insurance would obviously be, policy would name the city. The city would be covered by that insurance also. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions. I'm sure some of you must have some questions.
Any questions on the council's part about the logistics of what's being proposed here for September 14 through 16? None?
Oh, come on, somebody must have a question.
Okay, I guess we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Wristbands so we can identify him? Oh, no.
Counselor,
sorry?
would you use the mic, please?
Now I'm going to withdraw my comments.
Okay. I really think, you know, we've tried to think of things to do. Again, we know how short the season is. Other businesses up there, out of this area, Farrow's is offered to use their bus. They have a school bus to bring patrons from this area to other businesses in the loop up there. The businesses, for instance, the outside boardwalk business there up by where the water slide used to be, they plan on having activities there. And although this is called Bike Timber Fest, we don't expect this to be a motorcycle big thing. We expect more locals in the area to come and enjoy this activity. You know, again, I think this would be a good thing for businesses up in the area at this time of year.
Councilor Lippman?
So you mentioned about the activity in terms of providing police detail for making sure that stays in check. How's that covered?
That'll be covered by, the police will say what they need, and then the like Timberfest LLC will pay for that.
Just in terms of making sure that if the revenues from that aren't sufficient to, what kind of assurance do we have that the cost will be covered?
I assure you the cost will be covered.
Would you like something in writing or a bond or something like that?
Well, I'm just from
It's
the
a point.
standpoint that in
Sure.
the Weirs, we have had situations where we haven't been
We
able
have
to collect
history.
everything that we have been
Yep.
owed. So
I remember.
I just want to, I'll let the manager work that out administratively with you,
Yeah.
but that would be my only concern about what you talked about.
You know, of course, Counselor, this is going to be weather controlled, as it always is. Weather is king. But I feel confident with the experience we have on much bigger events that'll all be looked at
Well,
closely.
I think here's the an issue, and I thank you for bringing that up, because I was thinking along the same lines here, that as I understand it, and I'm addressing this to the city manager, if I could, all we're being asked to approve tonight is the temporary traffic order.
So if you look on page 34, when we get to this item under new business, it is to approve the temporary traffic order and also the acknowledgement that you're agreeing that the municipality is going to allow alcohol to be consumed on the street. And as
Details of all that are not up to the council.
correct,
They're-
but I think the
They
word.
have to get a permit.
So I think this has come at a timing-wise, this is running on a concurrent path with the special events review, because this is an event that's looking to occur in the middle of September, and the next special events committee meeting isn't taking place until August. So in order to try to do this on parallel paths, they're also going before a special event. So if you look on page 34, and this may not be an all-encompassed list, but again, approval from police and fire for the road closure, approval required from special events committee, additional indemnification and insurance to protect the city, approval to the extent required from the liquor commission, because these properties are going to be.
But, okay, so.
So
my
what
question-
you're asking for tonight is to do the temporary traffic order with the acknowledgement that alcohol would be allowed on the public streets for the time that's spoken to.
Okay, with the understanding that they still have to get a permit from special events.
Correct.
And without that, it doesn't matter what the traffic pattern.
Correct. And the escrow of funds with the city in advance for anticipated city expenses is on page 34. So we would look at what Public Works involvement would be for barricades and that type of stuff, look what a police detail would be. We'd put together an estimate, we'd hold those funds in advance.
So my only further comment, again, following up on what Councilor Lippman said, was that maybe this goes without saying, maybe it doesn't, but Laconia Bike Timber Fest, is not a thing. And so when things like this, I mean, that's not a corporation or
I think they formed an LLC.
we need to know from a liability standpoint and from a financial responsibility standpoint, who's in back of this. We're not giving a permit to Laconia Bike Timber Fest. We're giving a permit to presumably to the owner of Tower Hill Tavern.
I believe the owner of Tower Hill Tavern has created an LLC, which is going to hold.
That's correct.
The insurance policy, as well as fronting the money in escrow
Right,
for
so
the
what is the name of
anticipated
that
costs.
LLC?
Laconia Bike Timberfest LLC.
Okay, so all we gotta do, as far as the order is concerned, is add LLC to the end of it, and we are legally covered, so to speak.
And just so you know, Your Honor, that the liquor licenses, to have the liquor served outside of the establishments, in other words, in the street with the permission of the city, that would be an extension of the businesses that are there that wish to participate in it. So liquor enforcement would have to give an approval to the 3 or 4 establishments up there that serve alcohol. They would have to say, okay, yes, we're going to allow you to do this, and by the way, here's our criteria that you need to follow to make us happy, and then that takes care of that. So it's a two-edged approval system that that the LLC has to do.
Speaking of that, did you cover the excuse me if I missed it, did you cover the
Recycling?
question about the other establishments on the?
I had to throw that in, sorry. Nobody laughed. As far as talking
I'm
to
going to
them.
have one of the other restaurants come in next week and say, I didn't know anything about this, what are you doing?
No, I have spoken to everybody but the Weather Vane.
I gave him some information.
Yeah, because they're not technically in the footprint, because their entrance is out of the footprint. But I have been there with Anthony and also by myself, talking to all the establishments. Now and they're all in favor of this, but that's not to say that next week somebody could say, you know what, I don't like this idea anymore, and they have every right to change their mind and come in and make us think about it. But the thing is though, is that they don't have to take part in this. They can say at their doorway, we're not allowing people to come in, and we're not allowing
Yeah,
people
but
to
the
go out.
street's going to be shut off in front of their establishment, though.
That's correct. having been in that movie before, I feel confident that they're confident that they will get a lot of business from this. So, again, this is, 2 weeks after the Labor Day weekend, so.
Well, I appreciate you trying to generate some interest in the Weirs out of season. Thank you.
Yes, this is the Weirs Beach's response to Pumpkin Fest downtown Laconia.
Okay.
They've come back.
All right, any other questions for these two gentlemen? Again, we're going to be taking this up under new business. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in our audience would like to make a comment on a current agenda item? No? All right, we'll move on to the city manager's report. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping to be brief with this tonight because I know we still have the agenda and then a finance committee meeting to tackle this evening. So you have two reports in your agenda packet, the project updates. Probably no surprise to anybody, we continue to be working in Court Street. There is utility work going on there now with Eversource, locating poles. They will be removing poles, moving wires, so we can get into the paving portion of the project later on this season. We'll be doing some drainage work starting in August. We've got Liberty Utilities in the road right now working on gas main, and then later into September, paving and sidewalks and all that good stuff will be happening. If we're not already into Pleasant Street, we will be any day now. And that's the section focused on getting it done in between Folsom Street and in front of the school, and getting that section done before school opens again in late August or the 1st of September timeframe. We're in good shape on Messer Street, waiting for the drainage work there in conjunction with the drawdown of the water in October. Over on Bowman Street, the binder course is down. We've started putting the curbing in there, and sidewalks will be following there shortly. So a lot happening on the paving front. I know we shared with you that the basketball and tennis court resurfacing had been done at Tardif and Levitt, and then we had a sinkhole on Sanborn. The sinkhole was patched 2 weeks ago, roughly. Gave it a little bit of time to cure, and that court was surfaced on Friday and striped and ready to go, and it opened today. So all three of those courts are completed. Work continues on the dog park, and I think we're still targeting a end of August, 1st of September opening for the dog park. So things are moving on there. On the economic development report, again, unemployment numbers, as I say pretty much every month, continue to be extremely low, especially in comparison to a month ago and a year ago at this time. Many economists are saying that we are at full employment of those who are able and wanting to work right now in our workforce nationwide, and New Hampshire is certainly no different. And speaking with a lot of the local businesses, they have a lot of unfilled seasonal positions right now in the hospitality industry and others in particular where they just don't have the workforce, and everyone is screaming for help. We got the June inflation number. I'm on page 2 of the report, page 26. Inflation has ticked up a bit last month, and again this month for the month of June, running at 2.9%. So 6 months through the year, inflation annualized for the first half of the year is running at 2.5%. Final item tonight that I shared with the council in the afternoon on Friday, Chief Ken Erickson has submitted his notice to me of retiring after serving the city as fire chief since 2001. So the chief's final day with the city will be Friday, September 28th, so about a 60-day or so window from here, and certainly want to thank the chief for her number of great years here in the city and a lot of leadership that he's shown. So we've just got notice of that on Friday, so we'll be working through the process and obviously having conversations with the town of Belmont and making sure that we're both on the same page, because that position now is an intermunicipal position with both the chief and the assistant chief of Laconia being the chief services, if you will, for the town of Belmont. So we'll want to make sure that we have good communication there and that everyone's on the same page as we go out to look at options for filling the position. And I'm happy to take any questions on any of the above.
Well, questions or comments for the manager?
I just have one question with respect to the chief. When we go out and fill that position, we'll do that in tandem with the town of Belmont, and we'll be looking for one person to fill that.
That's what I want to confirm with them. Right now, our intermunicipal agreement is they pay a 25% portion of the chief and the assistant chief position in Laconia. So those positions are City of Laconia positions. They're City of Laconia employees that Belmont reimburses, again, 25% of both of those salaries, insurances, retirement system cost, a share of the command vehicles. So any of those direct costs related to those two positions, Belmont contributes. But before we start the process of advertising it as an intermunicipal, we just want to have that communication with Belmont that the interest is still there and continuing it. I've kept in regular update with Gene Bowden, the town administrator, over the past 2 and almost a half years now, and it's been a positive response on how it's worked for the community of Belmont, although I certainly don't speak for Belmont. But I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page as we go out to determine what options are best for us to continue fire chief services in Laconia.
Okay. Thank you.
Does Belmont, or would we intend Belmont to have someone part of the process?
It may be something that we consider them being on an interview panel or review panel. I think that certainly makes sense. I mean, that it was driven last time around by the Belmont chief leaving and taking a position in another state, and that was an opportunity for the dialogue about, is there, a small chance at some regionalization of services, even though it's only 2 communities, but having that conversation. And so we just want to make sure that it's worked out well for all involved, and that's a direction, and certainly welcome feedback from you councilors and the mayor and Laconia residents on how this has worked for the last couple of years.
Anyone else? Councilor Hamill.
Just a quick question. I was up at the Weirs over the weekend, and I noticed a sinkhole in one of the parking spaces on the new pavement. Anybody got any idea what that is? It was the cones that were blocking off the space.
I did see one space with 2 cones there, and I don't have an answer.
Sir, parking space 131. We believe it's a paved-over catch basin that wasn't raised when they did the final paving, so Busby will be addressing that. They're aware of it, and they'll be addressing it.
So breaking into the new pavement.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Lippman.
I guess I was up through the Weirs this weekend as well, or somewhere recent, and I was noticing up towards where the, heading towards the Weirs Beach sign, that there's some split in the pavement in the middle of the road that could be
That
addressed
too.
maybe with, one of those fillers, just so the water doesn't get underneath the pavement there.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be worth, while they're taking a look at some other things here, if we could take a look at that too.
Seeing notes being taken, so we'll take a look at that at the same time.
Yeah, not even a year old.
Councilor Cheney.
Not sure this is the appropriate time, but I had a conversation with the manager recently about this bed and breakfast issue. I don't know if we've...
The bed and breakfast issue?
Yeah, we have a bed and breakfast issue.
Okay.
Been staying at the house for
Is it
weeks.
your
I
bed
don't
and
know.
breakfast? He won't move out?
I'm
or
waiting
what?
for him to get over easy eggs down better. They're always scrambled.
There are, one of my constituents complained about an Airbnb living next door to them that I guess was creating problems. I spoke to the manager, and he had seen a legal.
So this is a zoning issue?
Right, but apparently Portsmouth, am I correct?
There was a property in the downtown area of Portsmouth that was challenging it legally on whether or not the city could regulate the use of a house as an Airbnb rental property. And so it's gone through a Superior Court decision right now, which is probably going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. So in looking at our zoning regulations, we don't have anything that specifically focuses on a short-term rental unless it's a motel or, a cottage colony of those types of things. So some of the concerns that were brought to Councilor Cheney's attention dealt with trash being put out days ahead of time, because if people are, renting it for a couple of days and they're told trash has to be put out at the curb when they leave, and the trash day doesn't come for several days, what happens to the trash? Also, I believe in this particular advertisement, it was saying that very, very many people could sleep and occupy the dwelling, probably far what would exceed a normal residential neighborhood type of setting, noise issues, those types of things. So staff has been looking at it from zoning perspective. We certainly would have to address it through regulation. If someone is really making the statement that it can hold as many people as they're advertising, from our fire inspection perspective, it would go into requiring sprinklering, and that would be a very expensive undertaking. Noise is certainly can be reported to the police, and the trash being out, you know, more than the evening before trash day is also something that we can address through ordinance. So there are a few things that we can address and will be addressing if it warrants. The zoning and how we approach it and what the courts do with this may be something that we look to address in the, maybe not the immediate near future, but the not too distant future. Because I see this probably occurring in not just Laconia, but in a lot of communities around the state.
Isn't there state legislation on this already?
There is not that I'm aware of through the legislative process, no.
Okay. Well, I'm wrong again.
Anything else for the manager? Okay. We're moving on to new business. First item of new business is on page 27 in your packet and has to do with fiscal year 18 carry forward requests. Mr. Myers.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. We gave you some preliminary carry-forward requests in a packet about a month or so ago, and as the numbers have finalized out, as we've kind of getting ready to close the books on the prior fiscal year, these are the final numbers that we're looking to carry forward. Almost all of these are related to a capital or a specific project-related expense. We're not requesting to carry over items like unspent salary or unspent health insurance. So these are things dealing with, planning money for planning assistance on either the master plan continuation or other professional services. In assessing, it deals with some outside commercial revaluations. We've got money in IT for some projects that haven't quite been wrapped up yet. Parks and recreation for community center, heating, assessment, and possible upgrades. A couple of the pedestrian walkways over at Opeachy, which is going to take place probably right around the start of the school year because the parks are so active right now. We don't want to be in there and limiting access on the parks right now. Also, any of our public works projects dealing with streets, sidewalks, drainage, all of those types of monies are being carried forward, along with the money that we had built up for the police and fire radio tower upgrades that we've moved forward on through this budget and a few others. So it's project-related dollars, not just money, because we can carry it forward. So we had preliminary list. These are the final numbers that we're requesting, and this can just be done referencing this staff report in one motion. We do not have to go through in as much as I know you like to.
Oh, yeah.
You can just do
Much
this.
as I'd like to read all these account numbers.
We can do this in one fell swoop for you tonight.
All right.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any
Is there a third?
Any questions for the manager about any of these individual items? Okay. Counselor Lippman moves to approve the fiscal year 2018 carry forwards as presented to the council in the attached memo. And somebody seconded it, but I didn't see it.
Councilor Cheney.
Counselor Cheney gratefully seconded that motion. Any discussion? All's in favor of approving these carry forwards, please raise a hand. Thank you. 6 votes in the affirmative, the motion carries. All right, we are on to impact fee transfer request. That is on page 33 of your packet. And again, I recognize the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, as kind of a sister resolution to adopting the budget, we had said that there were a few items that dollars weren't available for funding through the budget process, but that there were impact fees both in the parks account for playground equipment and the police account for evidence drying station. So these were presented to you as potential funding sources back when the budget was presented, and now that we're in that new fiscal year, we're requesting that you do transfer those dollar amounts from those accounts, and on this one you will have to read those 4 account numbers collectively.
Any questions of the manager at this point? If not, a motion be in order to approve the transfer of $7,000 from account 0-301-001-004 impact fees parks to account 01-499-479-0011 playground equipment. Counselor Hamel makes that motion, seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. A motion also by Mr. Hamel, Counselor Hamel, is now on the table to move to approve the transfer of $11,875.62 from account 50-301-001-0002 impact fees police to account 01-499-437-0010 evidence drying station. Motion is also seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Thank you. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries as well. All right, we are back to Laconia Bike Timber Fest. And that is on page 34, as mentioned earlier, on your packet with the actual traffic order to be passed outlined on 35 with the notation that this would be temporary traffic order Laconia Bike Fest LLC 2018-2019. Is there any questions before we get to motions? Not. Councilor Cheney makes a motion to approve temporary traffic order 2018-13 Laconia Bike Timber Fest LLC pending the approval of the above conditions outlined on page 34, a waiver of all licensing and special event fees, and to allow alcohol consumption on city property in the designated areas only. Councilor Hamel seconds that motion. Any discussion? You have discussion, Councilor Haynes? No. All right, we ready to vote? All those in favor of this temporary traffic order, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we are on then to unfinished business. Item 21A is a request for guidance on the expansion of the city's sanitary sewer collection system. It's on page 37 of your packet. And who are...
I can kick it off if you like, and then we'll turn it over to Krista Larson, our Assistant Director of Public Works.
Okay.
So this is a follow-up from a conversation that we had earlier this year about expansion of the sanitary sewer fund, and in some areas that, mostly down in the Weirs and the 11B neighborhoods, where we had designed, engineered some, and now we're applying cost to it, and we would be ready to pick up some existing customers in that area. And there is a requirement that if we do build infrastructure of sewer, that property owners within a certain distance are required to hook into it at that point. There's not that similar state law for water hookup. So if you build water and someone's on a private well, they're not required necessarily to hook up. So along with that conversation about where we possibly want to be building out, what the cost is, how many customers we'd be getting, the council brought up the discussions about what was happening with the land use and zoning chapter of the master plan and the desire to potentially do an expansion of sewer service into areas in order to attract new construction growth in areas that currently aren't served by sewer or water. And discussions there spoke about going out to out on Parade Road, and also going out on Hilliard and bringing that from the Weirs out to Parade Road in the area of pedal pushers, and that would tie in with the land use chapter update that was being worked on and now has ultimately been adopted. So tonight we're looking to do a continuation of that conversation with some cost estimates as to what it's going to take to expand it, those distances, to put it in perspective. I had also have shared with Seth Nettleman, our water superintendent, of the conversation, and I know he has had conversations with the water commissioners again about expanding into areas and the cost and who would bear that when there aren't ready customers to hook into the system right now, but as an investment in future tax-based growth and expansion of users of the system in the future. So those conversations are happening within the water department with the water commissioners, and tonight we're going to focus a bit on the sewer end with some numbers of expansion, and then that would help staff at Public Works kind of finalize a program for where they're going to expand the sewer, allocate the cost to that, and then figure out, are we charging sewer users? Are we going to front some money and hopefully collect some portion of it as development occurs off those sites? Those types of questions for funding source. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Krista Larson, Assistant Public Works Director.
Good evening.
Thank you for indulging us at this hour.
One more try. Okay. Fine. Okay. So as City Manager stated, this is a continuation of the presentation from April, where we brought up the idea of sewer expansion, identified some near-term candidates for sewer expansion, and also discussed some more long-term candidates, areas that are developed and areas that are undeveloped that have some economic development potential. This is also in conjunction with a sewer rate study that we are completing and that we intend to hopefully present in August on our sewer rates. The sewer rate study has been focusing on what the rates pay now, and that's your daily operation and maintenance and your capital improvement projects. So sewer rates fund daily operation and maintenance. They fund the capital improvement projects for assets that we already currently own. The question is, if we do decide to do expansion, how may that be factored into our sewer rate study? So I mentioned expansion into developed areas, and at the April meeting identified a project that's been designed. There's 4 phases in the Pendleton Beach Road area project. One area that in the 4 phases is the Woodville Ave area. And this has an estimated construction cost of $1.4 million. So the sewer, sanitary sewer fund collects revenue from about 10,000 sewer units. If a bond was to be used to pay for this, and the sewer users or sewer units paid for a 10-year bond for that $1.4 million project, you'd be looking at about $16 per unit per year for that 10-year project to pay that. Another idea that was brought up about how to fund that construction and how to fund sewer expansion. Another idea is a betterment fee. It's been used in the city in the past. 2 examples in the 90s where abutters paid for half the cost. So if the city elected to do something more of a betterment fee, they're in that Woodville Ave area. That's $1.4 million for construction. There's 65 abutters, and over a 10-year bond, you're looking at about $2,500 per abutter for to pay off that per year. That includes some rough estimates for interest on the bond. So based on feedback from the council in April, went back and re-looked at the land use chapter and really dug deeper into our undeveloped areas, and specifically Hilliard Road. There's the Class 6 portion of Hilliard Road between Parade Road and the existing Hilliard Road. So this was identified in the land use chapter as having the potential for mixed-use development. There's about 300 acres there that if that roadway and infrastructure was provided, could provide road frontage for those 300 acres. So it is a Class 6 road, would require significant roadway improvements. Our high-level estimate for roadway improvements is between $7 and $9 million for roadway improvements. The sewer improvements would be about $2 to $3 million. The intent is to connect to the state interceptor, the Paugus interceptor, that services South Down and Long Bay and runs south of that Hilliard Road Class 6 road. So $2 to $3 million for sewer improvements, and then water improvements also would be about $2 to $3 million for water improvements. So in speaking with Seth Nuttleman, our water superintendent, because of the elevations in this area, it would require a water tank and booster station to provide adequate pressure and flow for this area. So overall, you're looking at a $12 to $15 million project to roadway improvements, sewer improvements, and water improvements for that Class 6 portion of the Hilliard Road. Again, if ratepayers, and we considered expansion of that sewer system in our rate study for $2 to $3 million, a 10-year bond, roughly equates to about $30 per unit per year.
And how are you measuring the units there?
The units are, so residential households are considered one unit, and then for businesses, they may have multiple units.
Curious to where you got the number to divide by, how many?
Right. That's from the water department who does the billing for the sewer department, and that's how many users are.
It's current users of the sewer system right now, so there's
okay.
about
Future users.
7,000.
Correct.
So it's people who live along Hilliard Road now?
No,
10,000.
citywide, sir.
10,000 on sewer.
Oh,
units.
citywide.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that would be a flat rate that would be spread over all current sewer users, or a combination. So if we could, we could do part of it by betterment, and abutters could pay a portion, and a portion could be supported by the entire ratepayers of the sewer system.
So another area that was identified in the land use chapter was the intersection of Parade Road, Meredith Center Road, and Elm Street. The sewer extends just up to this intersection, but nothing past onto Meredith Center Road or up to Parade Road. So this was identified in the land use chapter also as having close proximity to the state school and more potential for mixed use development. That area has about also a $3 to $4 million expansion for water and sewer. This also, again, because of the grades and elevations in that area, would require water tank or booster station, according to the water superintendent.
So remind us of what the current status is?
So the sewer extends just to that intersection. The abutters on Elm Street and some of those side streets off of Elm up to the intersection are sewered. And then state school does have sewer to it, although if more expansion were to happen there, then that system would have to be evaluated for its capacity and could potentially need to be expanded. But there is a route for sewer up to the state school.
So if
Go ahead.
if I may,
Sir.
is this the chart that I should be looking at in associating this
With the intersection.
third project?
Yes.
Okay, so explain it to me.
Okay.
Because I'm like, help me.
Sure. So the sewer right now, if you imagine Parade Road running north-south, Elm Street running east, and Meredith Center Road generally running west. The sewer comes up Elm Street and stops at the intersection, and up Parade Road and ends at that intersection. So nothing north of that intersection is sewered, and nothing to the west on Meredith Center Road is sewered. So if you were looking at doing expansion of some of that open space that's in the northwest quadrant of the intersection, sewer would have to be expanded up Meredith Center Road and or up Parade Road, as well as water.
We're talking about the so-called McIntyre property.
Yes, sir.
And that's what that 3 or 4 million would cover, would be the McIntyre property?
For water and sewer, yes, sir.
Do you know what the, like the minimum amount of houses that you would have to have on a sewer line to keep things flowing?
That's a very good question. So that's one of the issues and the stumbling blocks that we come up with is that you can make an assumption about what kind of capacity for a sewer line. So you could make assumption about how much development's going in there, and you need a 15-inch line. Well, a 15-inch line is way too big if you've only got 15 houses on it, and you could potentially have problems with flow and it not working properly. So you have to have a certain amount of build out to actually support proper flow and of that system.
So on something like this, wouldn't it be better to see what build out there would be before running a line?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think if I could add to that, I think what we're talking about here could be disagreement over this, obviously, is the idea that we wouldn't take this situation right here with the so-called McIntyre property. I mean, I can't imagine a circumstance where we would just do that for the sake of doing it without some sort of deal, if that's the right word, in place for what's going to happen to that property.
Exactly.
In other words, if we expanded the sewer up there, it would be, okay, we're going to do that because someone or some corporation or whatever is going to develop it to a level that we agree with, to a plan that we agree with, and this is part of the package. The same thing with Eastman, with Hilliard Road. I mean, I can't imagine we would do that, not having any idea who owns the property up there or what their future possible use for it would be or anything like that. All that would have to be part of the package to extend water or sewer up in that area, not just do it for the sake of doing it.
Well, but it makes a difference to be thinking about this now because we're right in the middle of developing the master plan and how we want to use the state school and all of that stuff. So if we have something, a kind of a roadmap about where we might want to go and what the potential costs would be.
Yeah, that's great. I think the cost information is really critical because to enter into a discussion with a landowner or a potential landowner developer, we need to give them an idea of how much it would, what our costs are going to be for. So it's 3 to 4 million for total or for each water and sewer?
Total for water and sewer at the intersection.
But the idea is to pass that along to the developer, not spread it across the system here in Laconia, is it?
Oh, well, what the concept that we've been talking about, Counselor, at the planning level on this joint committee between the planning board and the city council that I alluded to at our last meeting is to investigate the possibility of being able to do this through a TIF district or TIF districts to pay for part or all of the funding, depending on how the numbers come out. Meaning that if we're going to grow Laconia, if you will, from a housing stock standpoint, we're going to have to make some public investment concessions, whatever you want to call it there, because there's raw land sitting out there that no developer in their right mind is going to develop without better incentives for doing so than they have today. If they have to bear all the cost of extending water and sewer to a remote piece of property, that's what's hindering development. And so what we're looking for is to explore whether or not there are some alternatives to doing that, saying it's to the public's good that we have more housing in a variety of price ranges and whatnot in the city of Laconia, and that might require some level of public investment to do that. And if we could make that up in future property taxes through a TIF district, then that's one possibility.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In the performance of that, whatever the development agreement would be, is the key to this, because as Krista said on the sewer, and then as Council Hammer brought up, if you size it for something and only 10 or 15 properties come on, that doesn't work for the sewer system. And even Seth Nuttman was saying on the water that if you're running that infrastructure and only so much flow is getting used, they're out there flushing a couple of times a year, and I believe he said hundreds of thousands of gallons of water in order to flush those lines because you don't have the volume going through them on a regular basis. So it's the sizing of it, but it's also, yes, could it be fronted, a TIF district paying it back, but it's really how tight of a window and what's the performance guarantee on getting a certain build-out out there.
How many acres are in that triangle, did you say?
In the triangle, it's probably about 10 to 15 acres. I'd have to double check that.
In the McIntyre Triangle?
In the McIntyre Triangle, right.
Because they were, that was the site they were proposing years ago.
Yeah, that's
Not
bigger.
many years ago, but years ago, to build the new high school out there. And I think it was
It's
50
bigger.
acres or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's all of that. I guess it's more like 100.
100.
Oh, okay.
So let's guess that it's 100 acres.
Okay.
So under current zoning, that would be 50 houses.
My guess is 78.
70, all right. So that's the economics you've got to work through in terms of how many houses would you have to be able to build on that property to
Right,
make it
right, make it
feasible.
viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you need some kind of a recommendation, some kind of a motion? What are you looking for?
Just some guidance. This conversation helps, us to kind of formulate where we want to go with the sewer rate study. As I mentioned, if expansion were to be included and then and passed on to ratepayers, that would have to be factored in to the rate study. So, recommendation to maybe a certain amount of infrastructure of expansion on an annual basis, or to continue to look at some other financial mechanisms.
Well, I mean, I don't have the expertise to give you an explicit recommendation with respect to how you should go about doing this, But I'm interested in pursuing this in terms of coordination with the ongoing update to the master plan, how we're going to coordinate that, what we can use as incentives for developers, like impact fees, whatever process we have. I guess that I wouldn't say no to sanitary sewer ratepayers, just right off the bat, but that would not be my preferred approach to this, since we'd be asking them to gamble in some sense of the word, and I'm not sure I'd like to do that. But I don't want to foreclose anything, and I want to get a really solid plan, at least an estimate of what the potential costs and benefits could be. And you're really going to get this to us in August?
Well, the sewer rate study is looking at what we're currently doing.
Okay.
So I will still come forward.
That's a little different.
Yes.
So that'll give us a roadmap of what we might be able to do in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, that's what my thoughts are.
I mean, just based on the sheer numbers going with the Hilliard Road project and knowing that you're upgrading a Class 6 road, and in addition to the water and sewer, to have to do that road budget of $7 to $9 million, I mean, that's a significant undertaking that you've got multiple property owners out there, and it's probably much less likely to come together and be successful. Where we've got the infrastructure close enough across the street from the state school, we've got it at Parade and Elm Street, Parade Road and Elm Street right there, for the combined $3 to $4 million in picking it up. That seems to be the one that maybe we ought to hone in on those numbers a little bit more and look at yield potential of properties based on current zoning, and if zoning were adjusted to allow a little bit more density out there, what could happen there. I mean, that's my takeaway of the two numbers, and just the Hilliard one, because of upgrading the street, is just going to be significant with having to work with multiple property owners out there. But if there was guidance to say to focus on the one parcel that we're speaking of, right at, adjacent to the state school property, and let's kind of define that a little bit more and put some yield numbers to it, as I said. And in conjunction with that, maybe focus on the Woodville project, which in addition to picking up 65 abutters who will be hooked into the sewer system, we're also dealing with improving water quality issues down in that area of the weirs, because we're getting all those private systems offline and everything will be on sewer. Maybe that's the balance that we kind of give some guidance and see how those numbers flush out into, what future rates would be based on that type of a scenario. Just putting that out there to kind of narrow the scope a little bit.
Before we continue this, given the rest of this discussion and what's left on the agenda before us, do you have an estimate of how much time it's going to take? It's 9:54 at this point.
Beyond dealing with this, we're just voting on the 2 grants, and
It'll take 2 minutes at most.
so you could say 10:15, I think would be safe.
Make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Lippman moves to extend the meeting time tonight till 10:15 PM, seconded by Councilor Haynes. All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes affirmative. Thank you. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Thank you. So as the city manager said, we do have this area, Woodville Ave, that we have a design for. We have a construction cost estimate of $1.4 million. So that may be an area that we could make a decision on, having that engineering construction cost estimate. The Parade Road, Meredith Center Road, certainly can hone in better on what the fiscal impact of that would be, and what the potential for build out there as well. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the Plantation Road up at the Weirs.
Yes.
And then down from there is Governor's Crossing, correct?
Yes.
That Governor's Crossing on 11B.
That is, yeah.
And that show, I believe, isn't the sewer run to that? I'm almost positive it is.
The sewer's on Endicott Street East, but does not go all the way up to Woodvale, I believe.
No, but I mean, Governor's Crossing on the right-hand side.
Oh, yes.
They ran that.
They do have sewer on Governor's Crossing.
So on 11B, you have that road circled by where Plantation is. If the sewer's already there, is that something you have to upgrade, or is that?
No, there's no sewer on the north side of the Plantation Road. Or west, I guess it would be.
Well, where's it come from then for Governor's Crossing?
It comes in further east on Endicott Street.
So it doesn't follow Endicott Street?
Right. It connects in at a further point down. There is a small stretch there that there's a couple of lots that there is no sewer frontage in front of those lots on Endicott Street.
Okay. So if there's sewer on Governor's Crossing, then across the street from that, if the sewer's already there, can you pick up that area? I can't read the name of the road, but it must be
That's Woodville.
Woodville area.
Right.
Yeah.
That would where.
Just saying.
Right. That neighborhood would connect into Woodville Ave where there is sewer.
Okay. So these residents here, you could send a letter and asking them about if they would want to do this.
Yes, sir. Have they been contacted? Do you know? Okay. Just checking to see if they've already been contacted.
Okay.
So if I could try to capsulize this, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I wouldn't bend 10 cents at this moment that I am, but what you're looking for is to see, and for the immediate future, is to see if there's any interest on the council's part in 2 things. One, building into the rate structure that you're going to suggest,
That's where the fire hydrant is.
full or partial payment of the sewer expansion candidate areas in the Weirs area as part of that rate structure.
Yes.
That's question number 1.
Yes.
All right. So in other words, put another way is, if I'm understanding this correctly, do we want the actual residents to pay the entire bill as a betterment, or do we want some of it to be factored into the rate structure?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then as far as the other two areas are concerned, where we're talking out in the future somewhere, we're asking the question, they're asking the question of when they make their rate recommendation for us, do they want us to factor into that rate recommendation any accommodation for possible general community contribution to that effort?
Right. Yes. Correct.
So that's what they're looking for us for tonight, the answer to those two questions. Do we want the general ratepayer to help pay for the Weirs development that's already there? Question number one. Question number two, do we want the general ratepayer possibly to pay for a percentage of expansion in the Parade Road area down the road sometime?
Yes, sir.
Those are the two questions you want guidance on tonight.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So what's the feelings? Councilor Lippman?
I think we do need to look at some options on this. And I mean, if we're trying to connect what we had put in the land use chapter with actually moving it forward, I think we do need to consider that. I guess in terms of how we finance it and what the costs are, in terms of trying to get some more precise numbers to look at what the impact is. I think it would be good in my mind for even the ones that we don't see feasible today is to at least have those costs so that if a developer is coming in to talk with us, that we can have an informed conversation around that, and whether we might want to, put some more money into planning costs associated with that to get a better feel for, what it might be. I mean, I think you're reasonably working off your, high-level estimates at this point. But I wouldn't be adverse to having some level of current rate subsidy to the extent that in the long term, we feel that the growth in the system's going to give us a better long-run cost increases. You know what I'm saying, is that we trade off some expense today to bend the cost curve over the long term and look at it that way. Because then you're acting in the ratepayer's best interest, but not necessarily tomorrow.
Let me, excuse me.
Councilor Bounds.
Let me be the devil's advocate in some respect. For the Weirs area, I mean, that has got a lot of development going on in it now, and it's sort of a ripe area for developers to come into. So that would seem to me, unless the development potential in the particular area that we're talking about, and I don't know, is very limited, it would seem to me that that would be a way of which we could approach a cost-sharing, private-public approach to this. But I don't want to disagree with Councilor Lippman, because I think that we ought to be looking at options, and the question then for me becomes how much time and effort and what's the cost, and to look at the range of options that we might have in terms of paying it. Now, for example, the suggestion that we get some kind of a ballpark figure on Hilliard Road is perfectly fine with me. And how are we going to go about funding it? I know we got, 7, 9, 13 to 16 million or something like that.
Well, let's tackle the Weirs area first. So the question is, are you asking us for a specific percentage breakdown between those two items, or, in other words, as a starting point, are you asking us to say, let's pay for half of that project with sanitary sewer ratepayers and half of it from the betterment process? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, sir.
So right now, we have the parameters that if it was all paid for by current rate users, we know it's $16 per sewer user per year for 10 years pays for it. If it was solely on the backs of those 65 abutters who would be required to hook into it, the number is $2,500 a year, each year for 10 years, right?
Yes.
For those 65 property. So 10-year bond, $2,500 a year per property. So $2,500 a year for 10 years for each of those properties is
So presumably if the
unrealistic.
general ratepayer picked up half the bill, that would be.
So that what we'd be doing, and we'd be, even that's gonna be
$1,250.
$1,250 a year. So that may be a little bit steep as well for something that someone may not be seeking. So I would say maybe we might be looking in the area of reasonable
Two-thirds
of a,
ratepayer,
of a
one-third
70-30 or a 2/3, and we could put those numbers together for you for doing it. And again, 10-year, the city sets the interest on that, which can be very low, tied into annual payments and do the betterment district
All right,
that
so
way.
we have that on the table then, the idea that we pay for it 2/3 through general sewer rates and 1/3 through a betterment process.
What would that add to the bill? Did you say?
Well, right now, if it all were on ratepayers, it would be $16 a year for each of the sewer payers, sewer users. So if we did 2/3 of that, then you're looking at, approximately $11 would go to, $11 or $12 would go a year to each sewer user in the city to fund the 2/3 share, and then the remainder of that would be probably around
$700,
$800 a year for the property owners each year for 10 years. So at the end of the time, each property owner would have an $8,000 investment, if you will, in having sewer running to their house in addition to paying the sewer
Or we could
fees.
recommend that the whole thing be paid by the general rate. That's up to, that's
So
what
maybe
they're asking.
we put together scenarios, 1 through 5, and we just break it down and give you the numbers, and you can see them broken down that way, and then we can have conversations about what the average person may be willing to want to afford on that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Carry this forward to the next meeting then?
Yeah, but we will focus on that one area with the 65 based on the design cost that we know of 1.4 million.
Right.
And then we can also do an estimate of the 2 million, give or take, for the sewer at Parade and Meredith Center Road. We'll do a little bit more work on what we think we could yield for units there. And that one more than likely would probably be set up as a TIF. So even though if the sewer users were paying that money out, it could be repaid as property tax dollars came back in. So the city general fund would benefit from some of the general fund tax dollars.
From a procedural standpoint, how would we, I think that would be easy on the Parade Road property. Hilliard Road property, to me, is much more complex, because basically in doing that, you're laying the master lines, if you will, which there would only be a limited number of houses built on that road itself. Most of the development that would occur in future years, hopefully, would be off of that road on secondary roads that don't even exist today.
Right.
Correct.
So how do you figure how many units are?
And that's the challenge of running all that infrastructure and trying to make it productive and usable on the sewer, and having enough flow on the water, not having to dump hundreds of thousands of gallons because you've got very low usage out there. That's the challenge.
Scott?
You're dealing with multiple property owners out there as well.
Right.
Is there some way we can survey that area there, would you say Woodville?
Woodville.
The Woodville project, to ask them if a sewer line was run through there, if they would want, if you've run the sewer line, you have to hook up. So I think we should ask them, do you want a sewer line run through there? And give them maybe those questions as far as paying for it and that kind of thing.
I understand exactly what you're saying. We do want to engage that neighborhood, and we will. But I think the discussion needs to be laid out that the system will be paying for X of it, but you as individual property owners that are going to benefit by having the sewer run to your property now are going to do it. And is this an amount that you would support? I think if you gave them the 1 through 5 choices, they're going to go, oh yeah, give me the one that's the lowest money out of my wallet. So I think if there's consensus from the council that would be fair and balanced for existing ratepayers to support the infrastructure with this improvement, and new hookups to support their share. If there's consensus here, then maybe that's the letter that gets sent out to say, this is what the city council is thinking please respond back and give us your input.
I think of all the plans that you've discussed, probably the $11 one, wouldn't be a bad one if.
Did you have something, Counselor?
Well, keeping with the 10-15.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that.
Do we expect that extension in the Woodvale area has a capacity to be much more than 65, or is that's the sum total of what we would gain out of that?
As far as how many lots are buildable, built on already, I think that neighborhood is pretty well built out.
So
It is. 1 or 2 lots.
So, I mean, I think we're looking for some growth that is constructive, right? And I think if we're basically, it doesn't seem to me to be the best angle to go.
Well, I think there's the growth that you are trying to do additional build-out and bring more housing and bring more families here, and that's one that would be the more speculative that we'd be looking at. But also you have the reason for doing your sanitary sewer system is water quality and protection of that, and you're taking 65 individual systems of varying ages and various degrees of quality offline, and you're getting it in a very lakefront sensitive neighborhood. So you've got, if this was out in the middle and not really impacted by water, lakefront, there probably wouldn't be a huge desire to go out and say, hey, let's just go pick up these 65 homes for the sake of picking them up. But because of the proximity to the water, that's a focus of where do we want to prioritize expansion to pick up existing parcels.
The ones on the lakefront, doesn't the Winnipesaukee Basin go through there?
It
Those
does.
are picked up, right?
Some homes in that area are picked up by that
Are
state
the ones
line.
that are not marked with your little cloud thing there,
Right.
is that, are they on SOAR?
Yes.
So all these lots along the lake are on SOAR now?
There may be a handful that are not. I'd have to double check, but there are some that have connections to the state line.
All right, so are we clear on what direction you're going to come
I
back
think
to us
so.
at the
Yes.
next meeting with 5 options or whatever, and we'll take it from there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we are on to page 38, 39 of your packet under unfinished business. Second reading of resolution number 27, 2019 Law Enforcement Opiate Abuse Initiative Grant. Motion be in order to waive the reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. Moved by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries. A motion would now be in order to approve Resolution 27 relative to authorizing the city manager to accept and expend a grant on behalf of the city in the amount of $50,000 for the 2019 Law Enforcement Opioid Abuse Initiative Grant. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting Resolution 27, please raise a hand. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Last item of business tonight is the second reading of Resolution 2018-28 relative to authorizing the city manager to accept and expend a grant on behalf of the city in the amount of $14,632 from the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant. First motion would be to waive reading of this resolution in its entirety and read by title only. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. We have waived the reading of Resolution 28 in its entirety. A motion would now be in order to approve Resolution 28 relative to authorizing the city manager to accept and expend a grant on behalf of the city in the amount of $14,632 from the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program. Moved by Counselor Counselor Lippman, seconded by Counselor Cheney.
What's your name?
The guy on the end.
Number 1.
And seconded the motion.
He's number 2, by the way.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. Resolution 28 has been adopted unanimously. Any other business to come before the council tonight? If not, I will declare this meeting adjourned with 2 minutes to spare at 10:13 p.m.
I like the dramatic part.
We need
Minutes
finance
to
committee
spare.
members to stay for a brief finance committee meeting.
A brief finance